Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 237. My name is NBZ, and I'm glad for once that my room is a hotbox, because fuck me, it's cold outside. I just looked out the window and it's all frosted everywhere. I know in Scotland it's been full on.
We've got snow again. We've got a second smattering of snow already.
Yeah, absolutely. Not great in this time when, energy prices are fucking rising and, you can't really have the heating on that much because Jesus Christ, it's cold. I'm for once happy that this room, for whatever freak reason, is like the hottest place on earth. I'm sure it doesn't help that I've got a PC in here.
You do have a heater, it's called your ridiculous PC.
I was going to say, yeah.
You've been burning that fuel all
year
round.
I should just be, I just need to boot up Plague Tale Requiem and just get something with high graphical fidelity to just burn that 3080 and give me some heat pumping out into this room. So I'm sure I'll do some of that, today or later, or whenever.
Bally Jr. saw his first snow.
Lovely, that's
fun. He was like, he looked a bit disturbed about it.
Yeah, was he confused by it? Did you go outside? Did you try and open the window and put his hand, or is that a bit dangerous with the cold?
He went out in his pram in it, but we didn't roll him around in it.
Okay,
he can't.
That's what you need to do. You need to roll. You need to turn him into a snowman. Get the real experience. No, that is fun. I feel like it's so weird, isn't it? Because all these brand new experiences and Will you ever remember that? I don't remember the first time I saw snow,
It's also really rare, and I would argue, in the last long time to get snow in December. It's normally a February, March thing.
Right, February's the super cold time. There have been rare occasions. I remember there was one December when we were going to drive down to London and we had to wait because the snow was so ridiculous that we couldn't go down. I don't know. I like snow in December because you're in the mood,
Yes.
Christmas is the mood for snow.
It's a bit depressing when it comes in the start of March.
Exactly.
I thought spring was coming.
Yeah, I thought we were done with this now, but I guess not. Anyway, hello folks. We're here for the last episode of the year. It's a big one. It's been a hell of a year, and we are going to obviously be talking about a bunch of stuff on today's show. Bally, do you want to tell everyone what it's going to include?
Yes. For the first segment, we're going to be talking about the games that we have been playing. For the second segment, we've got all the games that listeners have been playing throughout the entire year. That's both Game of the Year lists and GOTY lists. We got lots of those in. And obviously with our recording, it worked out that, we've got a lot more GOTY lists in this episode, but that's just how it worked out. And then for the third segment, we are going to make a combined list for the official TNL top 10 games of 2022, and that's a combined list of 10 Nintendo games, or games on Nintendo platforms in the year 2022.
Which in this case is just the Switch, right?
Just the Switch.
We used to say Nintendo platforms because they had multiple platforms at a point. Now not anymore, but anyway, definitely worth doing. So let's get into it, Bally. Not too much that we've been playing, but something that did drop recently this week was the Mario Kart DLC Wave 3, I believe it is. The DLC. So we got 8 new tracks, and we spent some time playing them. We played with the community, which was good fun. People hopping in and doing a bit of a mini tournament thing, which was great. And I feel like Mario Kart is just going to be one of those things that I probably don't play regularly, but every time they drop these DLC, I will jump in. So
it's just that it's like Smash Brothers, where you just check in every few months. You got your new character, your new courses,
right?
And it's still a great time. I mean, and quote MBZ while we were playing, he's like, this is probably the best Mario Kart. And I was like, right, I'm quoting you on that, writing it down.
I did say that, yeah.
So I think this is the strongest wave yet. I really, really like, I like the Paris course and the Tokyo course. They're fine. I think the London and Berlin courses in particular, maybe I just think those cities have more landmarks, and I certainly know London the best out of the bunch of them. But
we were actually interrogating for the first time, can we identify these cities as Tokyo or London or whatever? And I hadn't really paid that much attention while I was driving through them, but there are things that you can point out from those tracks that you're like, this is recognizable.
They've definitely got the area by Tower of London. They've got Covent Garden, Westminster, Buckingham Palace, Green Park, all these, the London Eye, these things that they really make a point of. And then likewise in Berlin, they've got the Berlin Wall, but then there's gaps in the Berlin Wall that have thwomps in them, which is just hilarious.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the like the Brandenburg Gate and all this stuff, and it's not just the landmarks that are just plonked in. There is actual like road structure and the way that certain landmarks relate to each other that I think is vaguely accurate, which makes it feel a little more like realistic, which is quite nice. But also this wave has like Maple Treeway, which is a fantastic course. And then like Alpen Pass, which is like
for me because obviously I'm a big Mario Kart 7 fan, so the 3DS courses are always going to speak to me. So Alpine Pass, also known inferiorly as Rock Mountain for US people, is one of the best ones, and the Rainbow Road is also a 3DS one.
And they've turned like a looping Rainbow Road track into just a 3-point track, as it were. So they turn like one lap into one massive lap, and it's a tricky course, like you were saying. That's a tricky Rainbow Road.
It is a really hard one. Yeah, I feel like Rainbow Roads where you don't have any guardrails are always going to be a bit crazy, and I feel like some of them do. Like there's certain. I remember on the GameCube one, there's that twisting spiral that you go down near the end. That they do have guardrails on that. But yeah, certain ones. I don't know. What do you have in mind? What you think is the hardest Rainbow Road across the entire series?
In terms of just the number of times you fall off, I would give it to GameCube.
Wow.
But in terms of like this course is doing things, I'd actually go Wii.
Ooh, okay.
I think so, because I think most of N64 has a guardrail. I think I agree with you. Actually, 3DS is pretty hard, and this remake is harder, I'd argue.
Well, they've got the kind of wobbles, don't they, for like jumping and doing those little extra dashes off of those.
And the Super Nintendo one, the original and the remake, are both pretty challenging, and it's very.
I do really like the Super Nintendo one though, because the cornering is so much fun on that one.
Yeah, it's really cool.
For sure.
And then again, they've like revamped a Game Boy Advance course. This one's one of the boardwalk courses, which I forgot the name of it, but it looks
it's called Boo Lake, which I really like this
really
one, actually. Cool. I think it's great, and it's got underwater segments and stuff, and I think it has, again, nice. I think one of the things to me that stood out is those older games. I think we maybe talked about this before. They kind of had to define their courses by how interesting the turning was, because there wasn't a lot else going on. And so I do find that some of the newer courses are less interesting from a turning perspective and are more bombastic with the flavor and what's going on in the kind of like background, versus these older ones where the design of the course was much more fun to drive around, I found. So Boo Lake is definitely one of those, and it has like really nice segments. It also feels really short, I think, because it's a GBA track. Like, it has a brevity to it that's actually super refreshing, and you're like, oh, I get through laps of this really quickly, which I think is great. So yeah, that's definitely a standout for me.
And we've got like the Christmas themed track, which is, I don't think Mario Kart's ever had just a proper Christmas-themed track.
No.
We've got like all these snowy tracks and winter courses, which are great, but like having one that's actually decorated with all the Christmas decorations, I don't know, nutcrackers.
I mean, it's a good choice to come for this wave, right? Deliberately timing it.
Yeah, really nice.
December.
I'm a big seasonal things playing seasonal things at the right time of year is always good fun.
It's great. Pentiment actually has Christmas stuff leading up to it, so I was like, I'm glad I'm playing Pentiment now, because like there's a bunch of that stuff happening. So
also, Nintendo did leave this very late for Maple Treeway, which is the most autumnal track imaginable.
Yeah, exactly.
We're playing it in winter now, but never mind.
The one thing I did notice about Maple Treeway, I don't think visually, like, the textures on the track look that good to me. It feels like they haven't done as great a job like up-resing that one, and I'm not sure what it is. It's like the tree bark when you're kind of like sliding on the branches. It doesn't pop in the way that I think a lot of these other tracks do, which I think is a little disappointing from a visual standpoint. And I don't know, I know that people have been talking about the visual differences between the new DLC tracks and the other tracks in the game, but I think this is the first time it really stood out to me as like, this kind of feels a bit inferior, and I don't know, what different techniques they're using or whatever, but it just doesn't quite hit in the same way. Not to say that the track is bad. Obviously, Maple Treeway is a great fun track. It's just visually, I don't think it quite holds up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that all the tracks are kind of put into categories of how much work is put into them, and what's weird is that, say, 2 tracks on the 3DS, so say Alpen Pass and the Rainbow Road, I think a lot more work went into Rainbow Road. And,
right.
Alpen Pass looks fine, but I'd class it similar category to Maple Treeway, where it feels a lot more like a copy and paste job in the sense of, and when you look at it, like you said, those textures, it's just like, it's a very flat tone of, say, green for the entirety of all this grass in the track. Obviously, you can make comparison with like the original tracks in Mario Kart 8, and they are just like stunning in comparison.
Oh my god! Even just the original DLC tracks in Mario Kart 8 are just so fucking, like, we played some of the F-Zero one. I'm like, god damn, why does this look so good? It's really just like outstanding stuff. So the one that I didn't love when I played it on the DS was Peach Gardens, which has been brought back here. And I think they've done an interesting thing with Peach Gardens where on the last lap, and this fucked me up the first time I played it, they just decide to reverse the track on the last lap for some reason.
It's weird because you're starting the 3rd lap and you kind of do like, I don't know, an 8th or like a 9th of the lap. And then it just turns the opposite direction and you start going back the other way.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I don't know, I want to get a general temperature check, Bally, because this seems like something that the mobile game has done a lot, which is mid-track just changing the entire route. How do you feel about it as a concept? Because I don't know that I like it very much, if I'm honest,
I don't mind the route changing. I don't personally like the way that it seems to almost change randomly when it's one of the city courses. That's my red line, I'd say. My personal preference would be something like Peach Gardens, where you're doing the 2 laps as normal, and then the final lap they change the route and it's the same every single time. I think the city ones on console are the same every time, but they are. It feels so random because there's so many different routes that it just feels a bit crazy. And ultimately, it means that you are often driving into oncoming traffic. And the only time, this is a really interesting stat, is the only time they've ever done that on a course before is Luigi's Circuit on GameCube, where it's a big oval that loops back on itself. And here's the fun thing, on 50cc, on that track, they put a wall down the middle and you can't crash into the opposing traffic. But then on 100 and 150cc, they remove the wall up the middle. And then on that big, long straight, you can actually hit people in oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And I think that was kind of done in a way where there's a lot more emphasis on like bumping the neighboring carts in Double Dash compared to the other Mario Kart games. Like, you can actually steal items off people by bumping them in co-op in that game. So it was maybe designed for that. But I personally like it, but I don't like it on the city courses.
That makes sense. Yeah, I do agree with you that it's just, maybe it's just because I haven't played them enough, those city courses, but I just don't know what the route is ever. Like, I have to use the arrows on the track to tell me where to go often.
It's not a nice feeling. I like knowing the map like religiously in my head. Like that's
part of the joy of Mario Kart is the familiarity of the track, so that you feel like you're kind of like, you're doing it and you can kind of excel properly. And I think that takes away a little bit of that comfort, which is it's okay, but that's what they're going to do. A lot of these, I think 3 of these are mobile tracks, right? So the Merry Mountain and then the 2 location based ones are from there. So overall, I think this is a pretty solid. I like these better than the previous wave. I don't think I played much of Wave 2. I was actually kind of underwhelmed by that. But these are definitely better. And man, they still have 3 more of these to go, right? We still have a lot of tracks left. So I don't know. I feel like that GameCube Rainbow Road that you're talking about probably will rear its head at some point.
I think they are aiming for every single Rainbow Road. So I think we just need Wii and GameCube to go, I believe. So
wow, okay. There. Damn, and then you can do a whole GP that is just Rainbow Roads, and everyone will rejoice, and it will be great. So, looking forward to that when that happens. The last other thing I'm going to say is just, we've talked about this a lot, but like the reverse quality in terms of visuals on games. Like Mario Kart 8 came out in 2014, and like playing this now on Switch right after Pokemon and right after Bayonetta, it's like, yeah, I don't know how like this game just looks better than everything still. It just does. It's kind of staggering how good Mario Kart 8
when Nintendo
looks.
make games, they know how to make them.
They do. They know how to make them last for a long time as well. So Fantastic. The other thing, I was doing a bit of catch up for this episode, so I decided I needed to finish Bayonetta 3. And that's exactly what I did. I finished it last night. Very exciting. And I think it's a fantastic game. I really do. I totally understand the criticisms of the ending. I think it's bad, but also I don't care. So I'm in this weird place of like, I totally agree with you guys. Also, I don't really think anything in this series is consistent or like makes any logical sense.
Okay, I get that the ending narratively might be bad, but let's try. When in the Bayonetta story was it good?
Yeah, this is a slightly different thing because it is
a bit mechanical as well.
No, it's more of a So I don't want to spoil it, but basically, like, Bayonetta is a queer-coded character, right? And, like, I think she has appealed to that community quite broadly, and, like, there's clearly, like, there's a lot of fan shipping between Jean and Bayonetta, right? Like, there's a lot of that stuff going on. And let's just say that they make her far less of that, let's say, at the end of this game. Okay. And I think it just doesn't make any sense at all, even in the way that they try and handle that stuff. And it's just kind of bad. And it's just in poor taste, but it's also like, I don't expect anything better from the company who, it's a Japanese company, right? Like, I don't really expect them to lean into that stuff. And that sucks, but it also, I don't know, it's like I kind of like shrug and there's not much you can do about it really, is there? So... Anyway, I think that overall as a game, it is fantastic. There are moments in those last few levels where it's just absolutely popping off on every front, from a just visual choreography. Like, one of my favorite things I've realized that I love about these type of games, and even in games like the Yakuza series, right, is before you have a big boss fight or before you have a fight with someone, there's often a cutscene where they do like crazy slow-mo awesome shit where like people are like, where they're like doing a kick and it slow-mos past someone's face and like all this stuff, and they like fist punch each other, and it just, the moment just kind of builds with those like cool awesome cutscene things like right before you do the fight. And Judgment has a lot of that. It's part of my favorite thing about the original Judgment game is like before boss fights it just has those incredible cutscenes that like set everything up, and then it like freeze frames and it shows like the names of the characters. Like, it's really, really good. And Bayonetta 3 has so much of that, where right before you fight a boss, there are just these incredible action set pieces that happen, that are just a joy to behold. And I feel like this is a screenshot game in the sense that I was just fucking taking screenshots non-stop throughout so many moments, and often just like, as I said, these kind of cutscene moments, but like they're just so amazingly bombastic that it almost defies belief in a lot of senses.
More so than the other two? Well, you've not played one, have you? But more so than two?
I think Bayonetta 1, it's interesting because Bayonetta 1 is much more of a straight-ahead action game. It does have those weird, crazy moments, but I think a lot of people who love this series still prefer the first game because it focuses more on the raw, pure combat of everything. And I totally appreciate that because I was trying to get better at the combat in this game, and I really did enjoy it. I played the whole thing on normal, and it was definitely, I found it a lot easier, I think, than Bayonetta 2. Maybe it's just because I was learning it and I was getting better at it, but it was much more breezy and easy to kind of get through those harder fights. But with those two games, with 2 and 3, there is so much more extra stuff of like, oh, all of a sudden it's a first-person shooter and I'm in a tank and I'm shooting something coming towards me. Oh, now it's a side-scrolling platformer. Oh, now we're going to do a shmup section. Oh, all of a sudden it's a rhythm game, Like, and I fucking love that. I love when these games go off the rails in that way mechanically and just completely change the way in which you engage with it. And 3 does that a lot, and I can see that rubbing people the wrong way. If you're the type of person who comes here to learn the combos and get really good at those like specific fights, then you might be disappointed because I wouldn't say there's as much of that. There certainly is a lot of it, and there are a lot of fights to be engaged with. But the verse structure, the way that it works with verses, where you enter a little mini arena and you fight enemies and then you're done. A lot of them feel quite short, and they don't feel like they give you enough time to really practice and get those combos in. And they're kind of spread out in a way that you can't get into a rhythm, I would say, with them back to back. And this game, as I already said, is much more exploration focused. There's a lot more kind of side paths to go down and areas to find, like, hidden secrets and, extra parts of the level. And I did really like that. I think for me, it's a part of the reason why I like this game so much, and that variety helps as well. But I do kind of get what people are saying, because I was like enjoying learning the combat, and I wish that there was a few more opportunities to do that. Because by the end, you're just in boss fight after boss fight, and you're doing set piece after set piece, and so there's less time to really dig into that kind of stuff. I don't think I had played as Viola the last time I talked about this game, because I was very early. Viola's fun. She's definitely very different, and I would say that could have been tuned to be a bit more accessible, because instead of having witch time happen when she dodges, witch time happens when she parries. But the parry window is so much shorter and harder to activate than Bayonetta's dodge window. Like, there's a real generosity to Bayonetta's dodge window, right? Yeah. You can get into witch time pretty easily, and obviously, like, the closer to you being hit you dodge, your witch time is longer, so you get benefit for like being better at that. But with the parry, there's really such a tight window that if you fuck it up, you are just gonna get screwed. Like, it's really hard to do, and oftentimes I'd just be like, I'm just gonna dodge with Viola, and it doesn't mean I get witch time, but at least I'm not being hit by these attacks instead of trying to parry and failing and keep getting hit by it. You get a little bit better by the end. But the other thing is that I like to use the move to get closer to people, and Viola's parry is on the R button, which is also the button you use if you double tap it to get to like zoom yourself across the screen closer to an enemy. So oftentimes I'd be like trying to click the parry quickly, and I accidentally double tap it, and then I just zoom into the enemy's face instead of blocking. So yeah, I think they could have refined it by, number one, making the parry window much more easy to do, especially on the lower difficulties. Like, fair enough, if you want to make the parry window harder on expert mode, go ahead. But on standard, they should have made the parry window better, but they also should have made it so that maps to the dodge button instead, because your muscle memory for Bayonetta is so tied to the ZL button or ZR button to dodge, and then as soon as you switch to Viola, you're like, oh no, I'm not going to activate witch time by doing that. I have to parry to activate witch time. So just the muscle memory is completely off when you do it. But Viola's battle theme fucking rules. Oh my god, I love it so much. I think I sent it to you, or I think I put it in the episode where we talked about it. But it is like a pop punk fucking anthem in a way that speaks to my sensibilities of the kind of music that I like to listen to. And I think it rules. Like, I was waiting, because I didn't love the main theme for this game as much as Bayonetta 2's. Bayonetta 2's was so good. But I needed a good anthem to fight to, and this certainly delivered. So that was fantastic. And I think it's just it's really well made. It's a fantastic game. Obviously, I think it just doesn't have the same impact as the second game for me, because that was the first one I played, and I think it was very fresh and new to me. But I think, enjoy playing this one more. Just as I said, I spent more time just figuring out the combos a little bit more, and learning and dodging and all that sort of stuff. And I think it delivers pretty strongly. It's a really, really well-made game, and I think the variety on show is just outstanding. Like, it really goes for it, and I think that the end of Bayonetta 2 is maybe a bit more spectacular. This one tries to be a little more, not grounded, but they're trying to do a bit more character stuff here. Again, it doesn't really work, as I've mentioned. But yeah, I think that there are some fan servicey moments, let's say, right at the end that I really enjoyed, that I thought were very well done. It definitely brings it up a little bit in my estimation. But I don't know that there's a lot more to say. I think that, I don't know what they do with this series. It's weird that they announced, again, we'll maybe talk a little bit about Game Awards stuff, but they announced a prequel, Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, I think it's called, which is it's basically when she was younger. Kind of, I don't know. Right. Action? It's like isometric action game, yeah, and it almost looks like a 3DS game, which is very funny. But apparently it's being made by Platinum, right? It's an in-house project, but I was like, that's weird. It's coming out in like March? It's March, the same day as Jedi Survivor, so, sorry about it, I'm going to have to play this instead. Got the real backstory in Bayonetta. But no, it's really interesting they're doing that and kind of expanding the franchise, and I think Platinum have already talked about doing Bayonetta 4 already, so I don't know. I mean, this one took a long time and seemed like it had trouble development. And you can definitely tell, like, in some senses, I think, for me, the challenge levels were really annoying because I wanted to do like all of the stuff in the level, and if I found a challenge level, I kind of want to do this. But some of them just have really frustrating challenges associated with them that just take an annoying amount of time to do and are not fun. So I think that could have been definitely balanced better. And you know, it feels like, again, if you're looking for the pure kind of combat experience, I don't think this kind of delivers on that, unless you're going to go and do stuff like post-game where you go and do the witch trials, or you do like, you know, combat arenas where you're just doing combos endlessly and things like that. And I do wish there was a little bit more of that stuff in the game, just to kind of flex the muscle a bit. But I think overall Bayonetta 3 pretty much a big success, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit, you know, in this Game of the Year stuff. So yeah, looking forward to that. Last thing that I wanted to bring up, Bally, is that obviously the Game Awards happened, and I would say 2 or 3 major like Nintendo associated announcements. Yeah. The biggest one, of course, that I fucking lost my mind. Hades 2? That's the thing that I can say exists. Hades 2. Supergiant are doing a sequel, which they never do. Like, that studio...
I thought it was not Hades until it was the chord. Like, down, 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 down. And
so the music sting is the thing that got it for me.
Because the theme of the music felt very Hades, but I thought, well, maybe they're just copy and pasting a lot of the tone of Hades to a new IP, but
so I was watching this in the toilet, and so it was on my small phone screen, and so I didn't see it very well, so I couldn't really see that the main character had like a laurel on her head. She has the same like Zagreus laurel around her head, and so I was focusing more on the character in the magician's hat, and I was like, oh, they're doing like a magic style game with like wizards and stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then the fucking music sting hit, and it zooms in on the character, and she opens her eyes, and you see the red like Zagreus eye. And I was like, holy shit, like fucking lost it. And then obviously we see gameplay, and it's a full-blown sequel with new characters that everyone on Twitter will be horny for.
You know your Greek mythology, MBZ. So what's the deal with Kronos?
Kronos he's a titan. He controls time, basically. And yeah, as Hades kind of says in the trailer, like, I don't know, how do you defeat time, right? Like, it's kind of a task. So the Titans obviously came before the gods. The Titans are kind of the progenitors of the gods in a way, and you know, they all had roles, and then they're in the Hercules movie at the end, right? The Titans come back and stuff.
They're all kind of elemental.
They're basically elementals, yeah, in a sense. So it's kind of like a tier above God. So I guess they're kind of leveling up in that way. But also you can tell from the you know, everything visually about this game I love that they have the color association, where this is more green versus Hades red, you know. Like they've done such a great job with the treatment of the art, which absolutely, like, this team is stellar with that stuff. But man, this game looks so good, and that was my worry, right? Will whatever Supergiant does next be as successful? Because how do you follow up Hades, right? Like, it's almost an impossible task. And I was like, you know, this game has been so successful, like, how do they kind of go on from there? And I was always a little bit bummed with Hades, because I was like, you know, they did this in early access, and it doesn't look like they're going to do any DLC, because they've worked on an early access, and their DLC was the early access period, basically. And eventually 1.0 came out and had everything, and I was like, man, but I would kill if they did DLC. And they went one step further, and they're like, nah, we got more ideas than that. Let's do a full-blown sequel. And I think there's a worry for certain people of like, well, you know, how do you follow up a game like that? And I think that's on their website. You go and read, and they say, you know, look, we always challenge ourselves to do something different, and this time our challenge is to make a sequel feel as fresh and new as an original game does. And I think that's something that is good to hear from their side, of like, they're really trying to push it with this. And I think I'm very hopeful for how well it does, because, you know, we talk about sequels often of like, you know, it doesn't have the impact, it doesn't kind of land in the same way, and I think they're aware of that, they're cognizant of that, and I think they're trying to work around it. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
So it'll be early access, with more details on early access this year, and then 1.0, we don't know when it'll come.
Yeah, I imagine probably end of 24 probably, for, you know, when it would come to a Nintendo console, probably not Switch at that point.
The day of the Game Awards 2024 is when I'd predict.
Yeah, probably around that time, I would say, yeah. So it's a long way to go. Another one that's a long way to go, the one we've been waiting for more details on, is the follow-up to Celeste from Extremely OK Games, Earthblade, which which basically looks like what if Celeste was a Metroidvania / Zelda game, essentially.
I think they read the press release on Games Daily, and they mentioned that there's basically zero progression. So it's very much like a flat kind of. You can do. I imagine it's like you can go to the final boss right now and still give them a bash if you want. That kind of game. But yeah, Metroidvania. They say like no loading between any world, so it's like one contiguous world, which looks interesting. And yeah, a bit of combat, obviously, and then hopefully some Celeste-like platforming in there as well. Which
they've
very
got
strange trailer, just kind of like panning camera over a Metroidvania world and a tiny bit of action, but not much. But the vibes are there for sure.
Yeah, they've got the wall climbing, you can see. They have kept that from Celeste, so that's clearly something like mechanically. It feels like obviously the engine is definitely leaning on what they did with Celeste, which makes sense. But this one feels like it's still quite a ways off, and I'm interested to learn more, definitely.
And they said 2024 for this one. So.
Yeah, 2024, so we'll see how that goes. The other thing for me that stood out was... Dead Cells. There's a Dead Cells DLC that has Castlevania officially in it, like Konami sanctioned. What the fuck? Like that was the first announcement of the pre-show. Like why you put that in a pre-show, I have no idea. But anyway, it's pretty wild. And I love Dead Cells a lot, and I've gone back to it consistently since I started playing it. And I definitely want to check this out. If it's a paid DLC, sure. I think that's probably a cool thing to check out and get into, and have some Castlevania. Apparently, there's 50 Castlevania music tracks in this, which is awesome. Like that
more
fucking
than Smash
rules.
Brothers.
I think Smash Brothers had about 50 as well.
Konami
is generous with their soundtrack for whatever reason. Very opposite of Square Enix, yeah. So that's nice, and I'm looking forward to checking that stuff out. Dead Cells is, it feels like they do a lot of stuff. They do crossovers all the time and have more DLC, and the game just continues to grow and grow, which is very, very cool. I don't think there was anything else. I guess there was the Mario clip. There was a clip for the Mario movie, which looks good. Continues to look very
film
fun.
Looks good. It's coming April in the States, but still no date confirmed for the UK because we don't matter apparently. And
we actually get it earlier than that, Bally. We get it in the US is getting it late. I think it's March 25th or something. We get it, so we actually get it before them. So. There you go. Suck on that, America. But I think there was lots of other stuff announced at the Game Awards, and Nintendo won a good amount as well. Like they won action game for Bayonetta, they won strategy for Mario plus Rabbids, they won their own category family for Kirby, and Splatoon got best multiplayer as well.
Yeah,
so
they did really well. They won every category they were in other than the Xenoblade games, basically.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. We don't mention the fact that God of War won best music when clearly everyone.
It's just one song.
Look, everyone who voted is deaf. That's all I'm going to take from that, honestly. Like, it's the only rational explanation. So, anyway, that's a shame. But, at least it was nominated. Alrighty, well, that is going to wrap us for the first segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break with some of your games of the year. See you in a bit. Alright everyone, welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's time to dive into some Game of the Years that you done sent to us. Let me tell you, everyone sent a lot in and everyone wrote a lot of words, so I've definitely had to condense down what people said, but I wanted to keep as much of your thoughts in there as possible, so we're going to go down and take a look at what the community has been playing. And as a reminder, I also put out a survey, a Google form that you could fill out to vote for your top 5 favourite games of the year, and I'm doing some calculating on that, and we will reveal that at the end of the show. So after we've done everything, the very last thing I think we'll reveal what our community's game of the year is, and we'll see if it compares favorably to our own one, and we can compare the list, which will be fun. So fantastic. Let us start and dive in. But before we do that, Bally, where can people send their emails? Because for next show, we want to hear your predictions, of course, for the next year of Nintendo. So send in your 2023 predictions to which email, Bally?
ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Yes, we like to open the year with our predictions show, and we like to go over our previous predictions that seem to never quite stick the landing.
I can't remember any of mine, so looking forward to hearing them. So yeah, send those in. That will be great. Let's start then. So our first email comes from Chad from Nebraska, who says, GOTY T to GOTY. Yup, I was very late to the 3DS party, and man, it was fun to catch up. I wouldn't have tried a few of these games without your recommendations, so thanks and keep up the good work. Number 10, Ocarina of Time 3D. Used guides a lot, but now I can say I've completed it. Number 9, Gunman Clive. Quick, fun, good with bourbon. That's a good combo. Number 8, Metroid Samus Returns. Played this before Dread and had a better time with both as a result. Number 7, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. Still have a few Kong letters to complete, but had a hard time putting this one down. Number 6, Super Mario 3D Land. Great second act, only beats DKC because I like Mario better. Number 5, Death's Door. Really enjoyed the look, movement, and discovery in this game. Number 4, Ollie Ollie World. Scratch that SSX tricky itch, which I think technically is doesn't count for this list because it's a game that came out this year, but we can keep it. Yeah. Number 3, Metroid Dread. Feels so good. That's all you need to say about that game, honestly. Number 2, Cuphead. I almost quit this game so many times that the satisfaction of beating all those jerks was too great. And number 1, Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. I grew up on Link to the Past, so this felt so familiar, but better. Love the weapons, rental mechanic, and the plot twist at the end. Really looking forward to your GOTY discussion. Thanks again, Chad from Nebraska. Thanks, Chad. Shout out to Gunman Clive. Good with bourbon, apparently.
Great 3DS list.
So that's good.
Great list.
Fantastic.
Our next email is from Wicked Gamer UK Alan, and this is a GOTY list. Number 5, Sonic Frontiers. Number 4, Bayonetta 3. Number 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I've never really been a big fan of Kirby games. I like a good challenge and platforming, so I felt they were just a little too on the easy side. I'm glad I put those feelings to one side for this game. Not the most challenging, but so inventive and fun. Don't sleep on this game. Number 2, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. This is my first Pokemon game to play to completion. I was 17 when Pokemon Red Blue released and liked it, but it was just at a time in life when I needed to focus on school and other things, so I never got into Pokemon. I really liked my time with this game. I'd never appreciated that Pokemon could be a relaxing game, nor did I fully appreciate the desire to catch them all and evolve them all to predictive. Again, I think that was last year, but
yeah, I think it's like it probably didn't do the cutoff. Probably it's like I think it was a December game, maybe. So might have been, might not have been eligible. Let's say.
Number 1, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Wow, oh wow, oh wow. What a stellar game. It's not perfect, but it sure does knock it out the park. The story was so good. The combat was fantastic. The characters are extremely well realized. This game is such a labor of love and passion that hooked me for all the 75 hours of gameplay. I can't wait to continue living in this world with the DLC, as the DLC continues to be released.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alan. I mean, man after my own heart, so we'll get into that. But, very good list. Nice to see Sonic Frontiers represented somewhere, I guess, So our next email is from Noah. Noah says, hey, Valley and MBZ, with the end of the year coming up, I want to send along my games of the year that didn't actually come out this year. It's the first year that I tracked all my completed games on how long to beat, which is providing me with a fair bit of data about my last year of gaming. Accordingly, I want to start off with some interesting stats. And Noah sent us a bunch of stats. Really appreciate those. I'm not going to read through them, but yes, thanks for sending those along. And now onto the list, and it's a top 6 because couldn't pick a top 5. And number 6, Steins Gate Elite. Number 5, Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition. Number 4, Picross 3D Round 2. Number 3, Metroid Zero Mission. Number 2, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And number 1, Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. Finally, I want to say thank you to both of you for providing us with a year of great, captivating podcasts and fun conversations in Discord. The TNL community is awesome, and I'm glad to be part of it. Best wishes, Noah. Thanks so much, Noah. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun chatting with everyone in the Discord about loads of games coming out. Danganronpa 2 is number 1. That's a bold choice. I would say Danganronpa 2 is my least favorite in the series, but I still think it's a solid game and has a very strong twist, and I think one of the cases might be one of the best in the series. To me, it's kind of like an Ace Attorney 2 situation where overall I don't like it as much as the first game and the third game, but it has probably one of the best cases in the entire series. So yeah, it's definitely up there. Some good stuff there. That's good.
Our next email is from Albert, who says, Dear MBZ and Bally, while the goal of beating my backlog grows ever more elusive, I did nevertheless play some fantastic games this year. Just like last year, my choices of what to play have been heavily influenced by the opinions of the honourable gentlemen hosting this podcast, and for that I want to thank them very much. My top 10 games, yada yada yada. I think the phrase you're looking for is GOTY GOTY. Number 10, Picross 3D, round 2. This game's soundtrack now lives rent-free in my head. Number 9, Earthbound. This would rank significantly higher if it wasn't for the length of the game being padded with BS battles. Number 8, Pode. Dare I say it, charming co-op game I would wholeheartedly recommend to anybody whose significant other is not into games. Number 7, Fire Emblem 7, the most convoluted story I've ever heard in my life, but a great tactics game nonetheless. Number 6, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. Number 5, Slay the Spire. Number 4, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Number 3, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, my proudest gaming history achievement this year. Number 2, Rayman Legends, and number 1, Super Mario Odyssey. It's rare for me to keep playing after rolling credits, but this game kept me coming back for more for about a month. Thank you for yet another year of podcasting. Keep it up. Merry Christmas and take care.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, Albert. And yeah, you can definitely see a lot of TNL influence on this list for sure.
I've not heard of Pode. You know Pode?
I do. I've heard of Pode. I believe it's a 3D platformer, actually.
Oh,
yeah, so seems like a neat little indie game. Came out probably 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say. But yeah, it's one I've had. I think I probably own it somewhere on PC just because that's how my life works.
Like every game out ever in the last 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't worry about it. Look, the Epic free games is starting in a week, and I will set a reminder on my phone every day to redeem every single one.
It's your Christmas tradition.
It is. It's tradition at this point. And yeah, I'm glad that you got to Fire Emblem 7. It's funny you say it's the most convoluted story because I would say 7 has a pretty straightforward story compared to some other games in the series.
A few Fire Emblems I've played, I'd probably agree. Actually, I did like 7's story.
Yeah, fantastic. Our next list comes from Hunter or Victory Star, and they say, to Bally and NBZ, I'm really bad at writing emails, so I'm just going to get straight to my list. If my entries are too long, you guys can read entries 3 through 1, but I figure I'd throw 5 in, and that's what I did. I cut it down to 3 through 1 for some descriptions. But at number 5, Pokemon Scarlet. Number 4, Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Number 3, Bayonetta 3. While I don't think this game has the best story out of all the games listed above, its gameplay and weapon variety makes it stand out above all the others, and it made me want to go back and 100% all the levels with as high a ranking as I could. Number 2, Pokemon Legends Arceus. The more somber remixes of Gen 4 music felt very nostalgic, the catching mechanics are a lot of fun, and the story being a prequel to my favourite Pokemon games, Diamond and Pearl, had me super excited to see what was next. Number 1, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Even outside of just Nintendo games, I don't think I played a game this year that has made me experience as many emotions as Xenoblade 3. I feel my experience was further enhanced a ton by hanging out with you fine folk in the Xenoblade channel of the TNL Discord. It was fun theory crafting different story elements, gushing about secret locations people would find, and coping with others during very traumatic parts of the story. I cannot wait to see what DLC story they have cooking up for this game, so I have more reasons to go back and play. Thank you all for reading my list, and I hope you guys have a happy holiday, Hunter. And yeah, I appreciate that because Hunter was one of those folks who was like ahead of me playing Xenoblade. I think they took a week off as well.
One of the 3 people on the planet.
I know. Yeah, so yeah, they ahead of me in the story, so I was able to like just say as many spoilers as I wanted, and I had someone else to bounce off of, which was very nice. So yeah, much as I absolutely burned through that game in a week, yes, there are people who burned through it even more than I did, which is awesome, and very glad to hear that. So there you go.
Our next email is from Matraya, who says, thank you for another great year of podcasts. Between a stellar year for Nintendo and the cost of living crisis, meaning I'm in my office 50 plus hours a week, I've actually played fewer pre-2022 games than there have been British Prime Ministers this year.
Oh my god.
Wow, incredible. Number 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I'm only 70 hours in and yet to finish it. I genuinely really like Xeno 2, but it's equally frustrating. Outside of its combat, which to be fair might be my favourite in any JRPG, Xeno 1 was better in pretty much every way. And number 1, Metroid Dread. I wouldn't describe myself as a fan of Metroidvanias. Feeling lost in a video game is probably my least favourite feeling. However, Metroid Dread hit a perfect balance for me. I never felt lost, but I still had to give puzzles a lot of thought. Most importantly, Samus feels so good to move around with. And then Game of the Year for 2022. At least until I play Xenoblade 3 and it takes number 1, lol. Number 5, Triangle Strategy. Great strategy-based combat, but the story cutscenes just took up too much of the game. Number 4, Splatoon 3's worth is that it just does everything better. The story mode is actually really good and the gameplay makes past entries feel sluggish. Number 3, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Game Freak actually try a new concept. The result is a game I have a lot of great memories with, and I really hope they continue this spin-off series. Number 2, the AI The Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative. Let's go for Uchikoshi loves his anime bullshit, but I am absolutely here for it. Ryuki and Tama are fantastic additions to an already amazing cast. A great sequel, but the first is slightly better. Number 1, Pokemon Scarlet. After BDSP, I never felt less interested in Pokemon. What difference a year makes. Scarlet changes my issue with the last few entries. Instead of being interrupted every 5 seconds, you're instead able to interact with the story when you choose to. I can spend an hour just catching new Pokemon or do several story segments in a row. I love the main characters and the Area Zero ending is genuinely fantastic.
Awesome. I do think that there's so much that Pokemon Scarlet does right, and it's interesting just to see people's different opinions of, like, do they prefer Arceus more, do they prefer Scarlet more, and I think a lot of people are having that kind of trouble this year of, like, figuring out which Pokemon game is the one that they want to go after. But appreciate you putting AI Somnium Files up there as well. Definitely going to be chatting a bit about that after this segment. So our next one comes from Acerbus, who says, thanks for another year of fantastic podcast. As always, no need to read all the comments, just extra context for my choices. First of all, GOTY to GOTY list from Acerbus. Number 5, Spyro the Dragon. Number 4, Bug Snacks. Number 3, Psychonauts 2. And number 2, we have the Great Ace Attorney Resolve. I like Ace Attorney 5 and 6 well enough, but this game shows that Shu Takumi's direction is really the special sauce for these games. This is a new peak for the series, both in terms of quality of life features and gloriously stupid characters and plot. And number 1, The Forgotten City. Just an incredible experience from start to finish. You're unpicking a very small clockwork world, and yet it feels real and lived in. The game actually gives you true agency in how to tackle solving this mystery. It all works so well. I just want to shout out Bally. Obviously, we always go on about what's the list of games that NBZ says Bally has to play. This is adding to that the new list that's called the New School list of games that Bally has to play. You've got to fucking play The Forgotten City. Holy shit, this game is rules.
I know. I let it leave Game Pass and I feel awful.
Oh, is it left already?
Yeah, it has.
Oh,
unfortunately. Damn. I'd buy it if you want me to play it, but I need to get to it.
It's so good. Yeah, it's definitely on that list for me of games you got to play. Then we have our actual Game of the Year 2022 from Acerbus. Number 5, AI The Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative. There's a literal twist in this game that made me stand up and say out loud, he's done it again, which from me is very high praise. I know exactly what he's talking about, and I didn't even, until I read this, I didn't even think about it in that way, and that's fucking G. That actually gives me a lot more respect for what that game does, because you're right. Holy shit. Number 4, Citizen Sleeper. This game proves the Persona Stardew Valley Just One More Day stickiness can be used much more broadly in games. Here it is used with very simple mechanics to add stakes and urgency to an already compelling story. Number 3, Nobody Saves the World. There are some people that this game seemed to just click with, way more than others, and I'm one of them. It was just constant dopamine, leveling up, completing quests, and creating surprising synergies that had me completely addicted. Number 2, Tunic. Thinking back on my time with Tunic feels more like an actual adventure I took than a game I played. Incredible game. Number 1, Escape Academy. I have to put this at number 1 because the highs of just crushing these puzzles was, for me, the most satisfying gaming experience I had all year. Not looking forward to hearing everyone's list and being reminded of how many amazing games I didn't get to this year. Journey before destination, I guess. Your humble listener, Acerbus. Really appreciate that, and glad to see someone shouting out Citizen Sleeper. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. Game's great. And Nobody Saves the World, which I think neither of us really did connect with. We're the people who it didn't work for, Bally. And
I liked it more than you, but but we can definitely bring that up next segment. But slightly different reviews, and we both loved Escape Academy, and we talked about that in our Nintendo show last week. But
yes,
great game.
Awesome.
Our next email is from Tim, who says, I didn't play too many games this year since my wife and I had a baby and played some long games, but here are my little... I had a baby and played a lot of games.
Well, you're like 34 games, Bally, this year?
Yeah. I think it's going to end up being 35 or 36. But yeah.
Wow, okay.
I'm very, very happy with my list.
Yeah.
GOTY Dakoti, number 10, Overboard, number 9, Firewatch, number 8, Gorogoa, number 7, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, number 6, Before Your Eyes, number 5, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, number 4, Super Auto Pets, number 3, Pocket Card Jockey. This game shocked me with how great it was. A deceptively deep card game with roguelite horse breeding elements makes for an amazing little 3DS eShop game I put 40 hours into in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Number 2, Mass Effect Andromeda. It is true that it's worse than the original trilogy in story and characters, but Andromeda still holds its own with greatly improved combat, and it was tons of fun to explore the different planets in this new space in the galaxy. Number 1, Persona 5 Royal. With the amount of dialogue this game has, it could easily have seemed slow-paced or bloated, but the writing and characters are so good that the hours just melt away. I'm only 50 hours in, but this game is truly special and tells such memorable stories. I can tell it will find itself very high on my top games of all time by the end.
Very cool.
GOTY list. I only played 4 new games this year, but they were all excellent. Number 4, Marvel Snap. Number 3, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Number 2, Tunic. By the time I played Tunic, its praises had already been sung far and wide, so I came in expecting great puzzles and secrets, and yet I was still blown away by some of the big revelations. Plus, its Zelda-like elements are fantastic too. Phenomenal game through and through, only beaten out by... Number 1, Triangle Strategy. It's no secret Fire Emblem is my favorite series, and this game hits all the same highs as the best entries in that series. Story, world building, and strategic gameplay and character progression are all top notch. It will also always hold a special place in my memories as the game I played every night when I got up to change and feed my newborn. The best of 2022. Very excited to hear you guys debate 2022 GOTY, as I have no idea how you're going to work this one out together. Hope you are still friends by the end of it.
Thanks so much, Tim. And yeah, interesting to see Mass Effect Andromeda so high on a list. Like, man, that game has a bad reputation, but I'm very glad that you found some enjoyment in it. And yeah, I know Tim's been a big proponent of Triangle Strategy in our Discord, and yeah, it's a very cool game.
Yeah. So good to have another busy newborn father this year listening to the show. And Tim, my equivalent game of your Triangle Strategy for me was Horizon Forbidden West, where that was my go-to game I'd play on the night shift when Bally Jr. was born earlier this year. So yeah, I know that feeling where this game is great, but it now holds like a really special place because of that kind of time in my life.
Yeah, for sure. Our next one comes from Chris B, who says, "Hey guys, so here it is at last. After a year of nothing but 3DS, I present to you, in order from best to worst, the games I played this year."
A lot of 3DS this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I think Chris actually sent us an email at the end of last year saying, "Hey guys, my plan next year is to just play 3DS games all year."
Right.
And he did it. He actually, the list he sent us had 37 games ranked on it, which I cut down to a top 10. But yeah, played 37 3DS games, which is fucking awesome. And Chris says, "For time reasons, I imagine you'll only want to read out the top ones." Yep, which we're going to do, which is fair enough. But for completeness, I thought I'd include everything, because why not? Number 10, Lego City Undercover, The Chase Begins. Number 9, Metro Prime Federation Force. Number 8, Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn. Number 7, Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology. Number 6, Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy. Number 5, Kirby Triple Deluxe. Number 4, Tales of the Abyss. Number 3, Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. First played it years ago and got distracted, but having gone back to it, easily the best Fire Emblem game on 3DS. In any other year, this could have been my number 1. Number 2, Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. A small number of the puzzles were outright misleading or impossible for me without looking up the solution, but in all other senses, I adored this game. The art style, music, atmosphere, etc. were all right up my street. This has to be an all-time great for the 3DS. And number 1, Metroid Samus Returns. This game is an absolute masterpiece. It was one of the first games I finished in 2022 and was never topped in all that time. Phew, this is by far the most games I've ever finished in a single year. I'm really pleased with how many I've been able to get through. The games near the top of the list are truly exceptional, and even further down the list there are some really fantastic games that are really fun. Thanks again for another really enjoyable year of podcasting, and as we look ahead into 2023 and beyond. All the best, Chris. Well, thanks so much, Chris. And I hope you get around to some of the Switch games you missed out on this year because you were playing just 3DS, which is, I respect that so much. Like, to have the willpower to just play one system that's an old system and not play any new releases is tremendous work. So thanks, Chris.
And our final list is from Capsule J from Georgia in the USA. Says, Dear Bally and MBZ, this year I played through games with release dates ranging from 1985 to 2022. Among these, here are my top 5 of yesteryear. So this is obviously GOTY to GOTY. Number 5, Sweet Home. Number 4, Get in the Car Loser. Number 3, Touhou Luna Nights. MBZ was right about this one. He gave it a great review on a previous episode, so I keep this brief. This is a top tier Metroidvania. Number 2, It Takes Two. This game absolutely deserves all the praise it got. As a busy working adult, it was really hard to coordinate with a friend to play through this co-op adventure, but I'm really glad we made it work. And the GOTY goes to number 1, Hunt Down. When I played this indie run and gun from Easy Trigger Games, I could not stop gushing about it, with gorgeous pixel art and combat that just feels really good. Hunt Down is a masterclass in retro style action. As for games I played with 2022 release dates, I actually played quite a few. Here's my top 5 from a rather contentious list. Number 5, Pokemon Arceus. Number 4, Scorn. Number 3, Elden Ring. Number 2, Transarubi,
I think?
Transarubi. Every Metroidvania fan should try Transarubi. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it polishes the aspects of its genre to a mirror-like finish. Number 1, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. As a lifelong Kirby fan, this long-awaited transition to 3D is something I've been dreaming of for decades. This game pulls it off with aplomb and was a joy for me to play from start to finish. Overall, this was a wild year for games. Thanks for another great year of podcasting. Happy holidays. Best wishes for the new year, Capsule J.
Awesome.
First mention of Elden Ring. That's a big game from this year.
Yeah. Obviously, I think a lot of people wrote in with just their Nintendo stuff, but we left it open for whatever list people wanted to send in. So very cool. Very glad that you enjoyed Touhou Luna Nights. That game is absolutely fantastic and is a great Metroidvania. And if you like, I would say, like, even if you don't like bullet hell, you should still give it a try, because it's got that kind of like merging of bullet hell with Metroidvania, which I think just is perfect, and is very challenging but really, really good. And I have Hunt Down on my Switch. I downloaded it, I think, in a sale last year, and I really want to get to it. So very good to hear you have some good things to say about that. And I have never even heard of Transarubi, so thanks for bringing it to my attention. I will go and look this thing up as soon as we're done here, because that sounds very cool. A Metroidvania that I've not heard of is always something I'm interested in, Bally. So there you go. And yeah, that is going to do us for everybody's list. Thanks so much, everybody, for writing in. Again, we cut down a bunch of these emails because people were writing a lot of their thoughts, and I really appreciate that. I think some people posted them in the Discord, so if you want to go ahead and read through a bit more of people's thoughts, you can head over there to the email section. But appreciate everybody sending in and writing all their thoughts out. It's super appreciated, and gives us a kind of indication maybe where people are leaning, for Game of the Year, and maybe that'll give you a hint for what our top games from the community will be. But we will have to get to that in the next section, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break, where we'll finally get to Game of the Year. See you in a bit. Alright, folks, welcome back. It's the last segment of the show. It's the last segment of the year, and it's time once and all to battle royale it out to see which is the number one game that's going to come out on top here and win our top prize of being Game of the Year. I feel like I'm a TV show host, some like mid-90s, like it's a knockout. Oh, here we go. So let's get into it, Bally. What are the rules here? What is this thing we're doing? Tell us all what is happening.
Okay, we are going to make a joint top 10 combined list for the games that came out on Nintendo platforms in 2022 that we played. And we should say there's a lot of games on here we didn't play on Nintendo systems, but these games did come to Nintendo systems. And we make the argument that if these games had come day one to the Nintendo Switch and had either run well or been affordable, basically weren't on Game Pass, we'd probably pick these up on Switch.
Yeah, exactly.
But that wasn't the case for some of these games, but they still deserve to be on this list. So a game like Overwatch 2, for example, yes, it came to Switch day one, but because we didn't play it on Switch and we had the option to play it on Switch.
And we didn't want to. Frankly, let's say that. Yeah, we didn't want to. Yeah.
We just felt it doesn't fit this list. Whereas, say, for example, a game like Tunic, sure, it did come to Switch, but day one it was Game Pass and it was on Xbox and PC, and we played it on other platforms, but it still makes this list because, we would have played that probably on Switch had it come there day one, but it didn't. But it still makes this list.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it gives us a broader list generally, more interesting discussion, and I think that's kind of what we want to do. So, Bally, do you want to read through the list of games that we have? I'm actually going to go ahead and delete a couple of these just to not confuse you as you go down. But we have 21 games, so let's go. They're alphabetically ordered here.
We have A Memoir Blue, AI The Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative, Bayonetta 3, Citizen Sleeper, Cuphead The Delicious Last Course, Gibbon Beyond the Trees, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Live Alive, Lunistis, Mario plus Rabbids, Sparks of Hope, Nintendo Switch Sports, Nobody Saves the World, Ollie Ollie World, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Splatoon 3, Tinykin, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, Triangle Strategy, Tunic, and Xenoblade 3.
Wow. Hell of a list.
Also, just want to quickly flag Cuphead The Delicious Last Course. We don't often do DLC, but we think this DLC was also so good and is kind of standalone to a degree enough that we were like, we're just going to count it as its own thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think it varies because I think I put Torna on this list one year, like sometimes I think it is worth doing. It depends how we feel about it, right? If it was a DLC that we played and we're like, whatever, I probably just wouldn't bother putting it on the list. But I think Cuphead reminded me how fucking good Cuphead is, which is a really important thing to know.
Yes.
So that was very, very good. Okay, so usually what we do, Bally, is we will chip away by removing things first, and then when we feel like we can't remove anymore, we'll start adding things to things that we think should be on, and then we'll go back and forth until we cut down to a top 10, basically.
Okay.
So I'll start. I am going to remove A Memoir Blue from this list.
Okay.
It's like fine, I guess. It's a narrative game.
It was short and on Game Pass, and you were like, let's give that a go.
Yeah, it's like a small narrative game about this girl who's she's won sports or something, and then she just disappears underwater. It's from Annapurna, so it kind of, you thought it's kind of got a quality bar here. I feel like Annapurna have been missing more than they've been hitting lately.
Annapurna, goodness me.
Yeah, Annapurna, they're pawning themselves out. They have not hit as well with some of these games. I think A Memoir Blue is a great example of that, where it's only 2 hours long, so it's not like I wasted my time, but I almost feel like I wasted my time playing it. It's fine. Sometimes I think games that do the whole "ooh, I'm a narrative game" type of thing, I think some of them just don't really hit, and this is one that just doesn't really hit, and when you don't hit and you're a narrative game, there's not really anything else to care about, right? Because so much of it relies on your investment that mechanics are always secondary, and there's little mini game things you do here and there, but it's ultimately pretty forgettable, and I don't think worth putting on any list, let alone this top 10 between us. So I'm going to remove it ceremoniously from the list as the start.
I'd like to remove Gibbon Beyond the Trees.
Okay.
I saw this in the Nintendo Direct and I was like, that looks great. It's out now. I want to play it. I'd seen it on Twitter, a trailer from beforehand. It's just 2D platforming with a gibbon just was really appealing to me. And then I heard that it's got a very pro-environmentalist message, which I think the game definitely does have and does well. The game just doesn't run very well on Switch, which is a real shame, especially as you get to later levels. There's a lot more going on in the levels, and the game chugs a bit more as a result. I think it probably would run better on iPhone, iOS systems.
Which is just sad to say at this point that
which is
phones
tragic.
are more powerful than a Switch, but
we're definitely in a phase where there are certain games that are just optimized for that platform better. But it is still a really cool little hour and a half, 2 hour game where it still runs to a degree where I still had a really good time with it, and it's just a really cute little charming game. I think that it's maybe one of those games where they're going a little bit more for the message and the vibes than they are on the actual mechanics of the gameplay. And that maybe is a little bit of a shame, considering like the real appeal initially for me was like, right, 2D platforming, swinging around. And platforming is a very generous word for this game, because ultimately you're like holding a button, and then the Gibbon's hands will just, like, one shoulder button is elevation, one shoulder button is like falling down, and then you're just doing a combination of the two. It's a very strange control system to try and explain, but it's not quite platforming, and yeah, it's okay, but I don't think it's going to come anywhere near our top 10.
Yeah, I do want to check this out at some point. I think just visually it's really striking, and that's a nice thing. And it's not too long, right? It's only like a
very
couple hours.
short, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, wow, okay, perfect, So, yeah, I don't know. Feels like it's probably better than a Memoir Blue, so it deserves to come off after that. But yeah, yeah, now we're just getting to ranking the eliminated games.
The duds.
Okay, so I think I'm going to take off Lunistis. I know I raved about it last episode, but ultimately it is like a very short little experience, It's not innovating hugely. It's just doing something really well, It's just nailing platforming. It's doing a really good job at being a kind of blend of Sonic and Mario Odyssey and like a bunch of different platformers that we know. But it ultimately just nails the feel, and it nails the aesthetic. Like, it looks really good. It also runs so smoothly on Switch. It's one of the best performing kind of smaller 3D games that I've seen on the system, and I really think that people should give this a look. I know we're not going to put it in our top 10, but I really still want to say it's only £5 on the eShop. If you're, over Christmas looking through the eShop for something to play, going to your family gathering or whatever, and you want a short little game, really recommend Lunistis. I think it's definitely going to... you're going to get a lot out of it, especially I think our audience tends to like 3D platformers, so if you're one of those types of people who likes them, then definitely jump on this game and give it a shot, because I think it's totally worth checking out. And yeah, I'm interested to see what the developer does next, because I watched NWR's review of it, and John Redden was saying, like, I really want something like this, but a bit more meat on the bone, like a bit more fully fleshed version of this game, and I think that could definitely be a really good success for them. So yeah, definitely check out Lunistis. Really, really cool.
I should definitely cut something, because then we're keeping it a bit more balanced.
There's one that I think you probably will want to cut that we both talked about last segment as probably not making our list, but
I can see your cursor move. It's not like you're hiding it from.
I'm not hiding it. But,
I don't think Nobody Saves the World will make our top 10.
I don't think it will.
I would have cut another game first, but I know this is a joint list. I think we can only make a couple of cuts before we even get to like our top 10. But
sure,
I'm happy to cut Nobody Saves the World. I think I liked it more than you. I think that it's quite a long game. I think by hour, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, I was like, okay, I get it. This is kind of like, there wasn't like that kind of third quarter fresh new thing that made the game feel good again. It kind of just...
I was honestly ready to give up by that point, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And I pushed through it when I didn't really want to, and I didn't really get much else out of it. I kind of speed ran it at the end. Like, I found one cave where I could go into that cave and just kind of grind out levels, and that's kind of what I did. I just ground out levels until I was high enough to take on the kind of end game dungeons, and there was some fun in finding combinations and things like that, but I was really disappointed by this. This is by far my least favorite Drinkbox game, and it just didn't work. And I can't really put my finger on like why, but something about it that I think just the way that it never really changed things up for me. I think it's just the grinding of the different characters and it's
trying to be fresh by having so many abilities. You have to grind different abilities to progress the game, and
exactly,
I think it thinks it's fresher than it is, when in reality it's still grinding. And like, you're ultimately, with that kind of game, you want the ability to be like, right, I've tried out all these abilities, but like Overwatch or something. I've tried out all these characters, all these abilities. I've found my 3 favorites, and now I want to beat the game with my 3 favorites. And I don't actually think this game really allows you to do that, because you still need to level up everyone else to gain the levels, to gain the progression, to keep the game going forward. And I think that's where maybe after hour 4 or 5, I would have liked the ability to be like, right, I've tried all the abilities. This is how I feel about this, that, and that, the other. I'm going to like customize these 3-4 characters I want to just beat the game with. And yeah, I felt a bit restricted in not being able to do that, where every time I came back to, like, I think my favorite was like the Ranger. I'd be like, right, now I'm back to the Ranger, and oh, well, I'm just going to do this one dungeon, and then because I need all these levels with all these other characters that haven't leveled up, I guess I can't play as the Ranger anymore, and that kind of sucks.
Well, yeah, it was elemental based, so you had to have at least one character who had that type that would be super effective effectively against those enemies and break shields of those enemies. And I think the most frustrating thing for me was I wanted the leveling to work in a way that I didn't really have to think about it, where I didn't have to, I would just like, in the natural course of playing, I should unlock all this stuff. But then you would have...
in reality, you have to look at menus and things just to work out what to do next.
You'd have specific objectives like, you have to use this character to break this type of shield. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to naturally do that, so I might as well just go and find that enemy and just deliberately do that for a few rounds just to get it unlocked, if you know what I mean. Which I just found frustrating. But hey, clearly people like this game. Acerbis already talked about it last segment, number 3 game of their list. So, people do really connect with this, and it just didn't work for me. So,
right.
Unfortunate. Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, I was just going to say, I do think that the list is looking very strong already.
It's very good,
we can maybe flip it on its head now. There's one game I'd argue that should go down that we've both played. Okay. But, do you want me to make the argument, or do you want to go first?
No, you go for it, Bal. If you've got one you think you should cut.
I don't think Shredder's Revenge is quite going to make this. If you're reacting like that, maybe we can hold off on that discussion. But
no, I'm not. I'm not here to like make a defense force for Shredder's Revenge. I think it's really good. It's just, man, I did have a lot of fun playing it. It's going to struggle on this list. It really is. But that game's really good. I would keep that on above Switch Sports, if I'm honest.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, no, that's fair.
Like, if we're going to take something off, I
forgot about Switch Sports. I'd probably drop both of them, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's drop Switch Sports for now, maybe.
Okay.
And see how we go, and maybe we start adding. And I think probably Shredder's Revenge will get cut eventually. But
why are we dropping Switch Sports?
I think we kind of played it for a couple of weeks and then never. And I know that's the case with us in the podcast, but also widely around the industry, nothing happened with that game. And I think ultimately it was the same as the original game, and the original game hit because of the impact and because of the time and local play and all that sort of stuff. And it was as simple, but even the original Wii Sports, as we said multiple times, had stuff like all the tennis mini games, like hitting off the wall and doing the challenges. Those were the things, ultimately, as a single-player person, when I was playing Wii Sports back in the day, that actually kept me coming back to it again and again, was the high score chasing of those little things. And this game doesn't have any of it. It's all multiplayer online. And look, it's really good. Like, I think we both really enjoyed playing the game.
Yeah.
But I don't think it just holds your attention for long enough to warrant being on a top 10 list,
I think had they included more single player modes, it would have done better for us personally on this list. I don't think it would have sold any better or made any more waves, but I think the new sports are good, but I don't think they're doing anything that reinvents the wheel, or it's quite predictable arguably. And yeah, it's really good, and we had a lot of fun, but it felt so paper thin in a way, like that level of fun, there's not a ton of depth, and
it was cheap, to be fair. It was like cheap. 25 quid or whatever.
It was good, and it scratched that nostalgia itch in a nice way for us, which I did like. And if I was Nintendo on the Nintendo board, I would have very much have been keen on Nintendo throwing something like this at the wall and seeing if it sticks, because it's the kind of thing that Nintendo, like, if this does well, it sells 15 million, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But either way, it's not.
If it doesn't do well, it only sells 6 million,
Yeah, and I think, I don't know what the sales are for this game, but I imagine it sold, I don't know, a couple of million or something.
Yeah, I think fine, probably.
But, it had the potential. They gave us something that was pretty threadbare and a little bit unforgivable in some senses.
Yeah.
But still has a good time with it, and yeah, it's not going to make our top 10.
It's not, sadly. Okay, should we start putting some things into a top list so we can just remove them from our headspace a little bit on this list?
Let's put things on the top list that we think actually can merit top 5.
Yeah, okay, let's do top 5.
Or we think are at least in the top 5 discussion.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I move to put Xenoblade Chronicles
right.
3 on this list.
Saw that one
okay?
coming.
All right,
let's
do that. I'll put that up there.
I think Tunic's also in that discussion.
Agreed, definitely. I think Citizen Sleeper is in that discussion.
I was going to go for that one next as well.
Okay, let's put that up there. Any others, Bally, that stand out to you that have to be top 5 material, do you think?
If there was one more lock for this top group, in my opinion, it would be Cuphead.
Ooh. Yeah. I'll take that.
Okay.
And we can discuss it. It could drop, but
yeah,
man,
it can drop.
That thing's fucking good. Okay. Is there anything else that we want to lock?
I don't personally think there's anything that's close to a lock for top 5, but obviously something else is going to make top 5 because we've got 4 so far. But
yeah, totally. Okay, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. There are a lot of very good games in the middle here. That's
Yes.
going to be a hard fought battle to get them on the list. Maybe some deals have to be struck here.
Yeah, it's getting tough.
Okay, so I think TMNT probably goes then, doesn't it? You know, I think we
so.
gave it its time. I played this game twice now, right? Because I played it myself and then I played it with you. I think it is, again, like for a genre that we don't tend to like a lot.
No.
It's a really good one of those, you know? I think for me, it nails the mechanical aspect where the dodge rolls are there and the kind of the ability to jump and like have a bit more flow to your movement just stands it apart from stuff like the Streets of Rage series or like classic beat 'em ups, other ones we played, like the Battle Hallberg one that we played. It just feels like you have a bit more, I don't know, you're just dexterous, you know, in a way that these games never usually allow you to be. And for me, that made it feel so much better to play. And it just has a lot of personality. Like, all the enemies, like the guys just playing their Game Boys or like sleeping on the bench. Like, there's so much character in all those animations. It's so lovingly crafted. And generally, like a good challenge level as well, right? Like, we would, playing through, together, be like, oh shit, you know, you need to take the pizza because your health is low or whatever, and you know, make sure we're strategizing a little bit. And ultimately, I think it just offers a little bit more than most beat-em-ups do and modernizes things, you know? I think for me, that's the most important thing, is that it feels like it modernizes the idea of beat-em-ups. And Streets of Rage 4 already was on that path, but I think this goes a step further and really puts it in perspective. And it kind of bums me out in a sense, because it makes me feel like I don't think a beat-em-up will ever make our list if TMNT Shredder's Revenge isn't going to make our list.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the best ones I've ever played and like probably up there. I think it's, again, I just think the genre is playing against its favor here, which is rough, because I just don't like these types of games. But
yeah, it is rough. But how many people in 2022 haven't played a beat 'em up that then play a game like Shredder's Revenge, and then that makes, say, like, I don't know, the top 3 on their list? You know, like,
I think a good number
does it have
of people.
does it have that appeal where it can turn people over to the genre?
I think it can, honestly. And if I'm honest, you know, I think that both this and Streets of Rage 4, if we get more modern beat-em-ups like this, I will absolutely play those types of games. Now, the problem with this genre is it's all about replayability and going through, because it only takes a couple hours to play through the main story, and I don't tend to go back after I finish something, right? So I feel like it's for people who want to keep playing the same game again and again. There's loads of stuff to unlock in this, and like the leveling system. I also like there's a leveling system, right, that you unlock more moves as you go along, and you know, there's a good variety of characters you can choose from, and they all play very differently. I played as, oh god, who was it in the first? I don't remember any of the names of the turtles, but I played as the one with the
Donatello, Michelangelo.
Yeah, I played with the one who had the sword, I think, or the knives. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
I think it was the knives, maybe. And that was fun. And then I played as April O'Neil, and she has the microphone, and that's even more fun. She's very fast and like agile, and that was really good. So yeah, Shredder's Revenge is excellent, and it's not making this list is no reflection on its quality, because it is extremely high. It's just look, it's me, not you. You know, it's my problem. It's not you. All right. Nothing wrong with you, Shredder's Revenge. You're perfect. You're a beautiful specimen.
I think I don't see Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope making it in this list.
Yeah, I was gonna wait to see if that was a bombshell that would be dropped, but
I really like this game. You know,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's gonna make my top 10 either, but like it improves on so many things of the first game, but then goes backwards in other ones. I think we mentioned before that the opera singer battle in the first game, as it stands, is like the peak of this series so far, and it's a shame that there's nothing in this game that reaches that level of bombast and craziness and just charm that battle summarizes the charm of Mario plus Rabbids. Like, it's just hilarious, it's silly, and as you said before, they're talking about Mario's video game career so far, and it's nothing hits on that level in this game. And there's a handful of worlds where you don't get a new character, and there's just not quite enough boss fights and like challenges that I was like, right, this is interesting. But the world building's really good, and like the worlds to explore are a lot more fun than the first game. Then as the game wrapped up, I was like, yeah, that was a good boss battle. And then the final battle was like, well, that was a good boss battle. And then I was left beating the game feeling, yeah, that was a really good game, but it's not far surpassing the first game, and it just wasn't quite reaching a level I was hoping it might overall. And I'm interested what you think, because I know you've played like the first.
Yeah, obviously I'm like only 6 hours into this thing, and I'm like near the end of the second world, I believe. Okay. And you know, I got thrown off by Bayonetta 3 coming out, and then God of War coming out, and then I decided to play Pentiment, and I decided to play like 7 other games. But I don't know. I think that maybe speaks to how I felt about it initially. Was like, I didn't feel like a longing to like. Obviously, I think it was other games. It was just a scheduling thing more than anything. But I do think if I had loved Mario plus Rabbids more, I would have spent the time to play more of it before those games came out, and I just didn't. And I don't know if it's just the structure of it or whatever, but I just found it a little bit harder to pick up and play, and I don't know why that is.
I also think the first 10 hours were more-ish and impactful than the last 10 hours. It's a roughly 20-hour game, I think. And I don't know. So I was just a bit like, there's like a middle point in that game where it's like, oh, you're not going to give me a new character? There's not like a new big it was like, oh, so you're just going to fill out more levels that kind of, not filler, that's a harsh word, but like, it's like, right, well, I'm not getting a new character to mix up the formula again, and that was a bit frustrating. And yeah, I don't know, it's got a few issues, but it's not going to make our top 10.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I would have liked to have played it, but for me personally, I was enjoying Bayonetta 3 more, and that was the game that I wanted to try and finish before we had this conversation. So knowing that you had already beaten Mario plus Rabbids, and yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Okay. Is there anything that we want to move up to the list that we think is going to make it? Because for me, there is definitely a couple here that I think probably just should be on the list, at least for the moment. What do you think?
In the top 5 or in the top 10?
No, just in the top, just generally on the list,
10.
yeah? I think Splatoon 3 has to be on this list. I wouldn't have believed myself saying that at the start of this year, but I think the single player for Splatoon 3 really, really knocked my socks off. And
I agree.
Is such a big improvement that I want to reward it, you know? Like, I cannot tell you how much I fucking despise the single player Splatoon 2. And for me to come around and say this is one of the best single player campaigns Nintendo has ever done, like, that is a massive difference, and it's a huge deal. And, you know, obviously, we're playing loads of games all the time, so I've not played as much multiplayer as I would have wanted for Splatoon 3. But the multiplayer is still fantastic, you know? It still feels fantastic. They've made improvements to the lobby system and all that sort of stuff, and I think it really is the peak of the series at this point. And I would have said Splatoon 1 was before this, and there's still some maps that we talked about would like to come back, but with multiplayer, with how strong the single player is, and how well it runs, how good it looks, it's... The new weapons are fun. Like, I think we've got to have it on this list. And I wouldn't have believed myself saying that at the start of this year, but I really think they surprised us with Splatoon 3.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah. The single player, I was already a fan of Splatoon single player, and this just went above and beyond. It felt they stuck to they kept switching around like new abilities and new weapons a lot more in the single player campaign, and there were very few levels that felt like a trudge, where it's like, right, okay, here I've got to get from point A to B, and there's all these enemies, and I've already used this gun, I already know what these enemies are going to do. That were just enemies you'd already faced, weapons you'd already used. And I think the single player campaign did such a good job of saying, well, here's a new weapon, here's a new enemy, and there's a new, or not even an enemy, like, here's a level where there's not even any enemies. You're just going to be making a 3-dimensional whale using blocks, and you're basically like squirting your gun in these specific ways. And
just the bite-sized mini challenges of it all, was so well designed and really thought through. And also, obviously the live system is still there, but at least they fucking let you do retries and spend your currency in order to like not lose your checkpoint and stuff like that, right? Like, these are the types of improvements that I was talking about and hoping that they would make. And they did make them, and it was really good. And I also really like the overworld stuff, right? Like, just exploring the snowy kind of like areas and uncovering all the hidden secrets and stuff. It was really fun, and that's like a level of kind of 3D platforming exploration that they added to like a meta layer of the game that I thought was super excellent. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more when we get to the list, but I think it should be on the list. Another one I would like to vouch for, I think we're in danger of forgetting how much we were into this game. And it's infamous because we just went back and forth, but I think Ollie Ollie World has to be on this list.
I agree.
It, like, fucking going back and forth on that one level was so much fun.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And I do think this game has like some issues later on with some of the stages getting like really stupid hard for some of those alternate paths, but it's kind of the point because it's supposed to be that way.
I also think the game does a really good job of being able to be played in so many ways, where I was more or less playing it, other than the one level where I was just trying to take down your score constantly. Other than that level, I was more or less playing from start to finish and just beating these levels and not going for the high scores as such. And
I was doing all the challenges, man. Like, I really did like go in for it. And again, towards the end, it gets very hard to do all those challenges, so I fell off in the last couple of worlds. But I think the first 3 worlds, I have every challenge for every stage almost. That's why it took me so long to get through this game, because I was just like, there's something about it. I think it's how people were talking about Neon White this year as well. It was like, I would end up spending like 25 minutes on one level just trying to do everything and be like, oh, I guess I'm not really, like, Bally's much further ahead in this game than me because I'm just sitting here doing this one level over and over again, Like, it really got me. And there's DLC for this that has come out recently that I would love to give a go, so it's still on my radar to go back to Ollie Ollie World, because I think just from a feel and animation standpoint, it's so perfect and on point, like the movement and just the sound design of just, gliding on those rails and, everything that's keeping your combo going by using the, what's it called, where you like use the board and you kind of flick it and you're sliding on it? It's not on
a manual.
Manual, yeah, using manuals and stuff to continue your combo, and like all the calculations that were going on in my head of like how many I could do between rails to keep that combo going. It was really like a strategy, and I got deep into it. So
yeah, I agree, and I think it was just so fun. And I mean, the other games held up mechanically, but this game added, for me, it was the level design, the world design, and then the style of the world. Like, all these things were just like things layered on top that just made this a much better game than previous games, in my opinion, and just made it. I mean, this game I think did quite well and became a lot more talked about in our podcasting circles and stuff. And I think that speaks to like what they were doing with the art style and the level design, and yeah, it was just very cool, very cool. I agree. Really it should be up there. So
okay,
we've got like a little group of top 4 roughly, which is sitting at Xenoblade 3, Tunic, Citizen Sleeper, and Cuphead, the delicious last course. And then we've got the kind of like the top 10, but maybe not top 5, sitting at Splatoon 3 and Ollie Ollie World.
Yeah.
Then we've got this big group in the middle that needs to go up or down, which is AI the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative, Bayonetta 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Live Alive, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Tinykin, and Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
It's getting hard.
It's getting really, really difficult. Bally, talk to me about Tinykin, because I like Tinykin a lot. I think you love Tinykin, though.
I love Tinykin. Tinykin is one of the few games on this list that will actually be in my top 10 of like overall for the year. And yes, I don't think the ending or anything is anything special, but like, I've not. Maybe and like there generally there aren't a ton of 3D platformers out there always coming out, but I've not felt like that kind of, here's a big open world, I'm just going to explore and jump around in a Mario Odyssey way since Mario Odyssey, and this game deserves so much credit for that. And it just looks really good, like having the 2D sprite on the 3D world. Like initially when I saw trailers, I thought that's a little bit gimmicky. I can see they're doing that to kind of make sure the game runs well, this kind of thing. But when you're playing it, it's like it actually looks really, really good. I was playing
it's a
this
gorgeous
on Series
game.
X. Yeah, it's so good, and it turns, there's no combat. It's just exploring and collecting, and as simple as that is, it's really, really fun. And and a huge shout out needs to go to like the green tinykin that you use as ladders, where that was the one type of tinykin that genuinely felt really innovative that I didn't think I've really seen in other games. And a lot of the other tinykin you could kind of map to certain types of Pikmin a bit more closely.
They were very like specific for different puzzles, where like the ladder ones or the ones that created electricity chains and stuff, like you could only interact with them in specific circumstances, where the green ones were, you could use it for just a function of platforming that was useful everywhere, which I thought is why they stood apart, because you know, they were a multi-tool in a sense. Like you could use them in lots of different scenarios to be helpful. So, yeah, I like this game a lot. I think for me, I unfortunately got motion sick from it, and I have no idea why, but I couldn't play it for too long because it did give me motion sickness. And I do think that like towards the end, it was pushing it a little bit. Like you get to that point where, man, I feel like I've exhausted everything, and I don't quite have enough things here collected, or I just don't know where this last thing is. Like there's that frustrating part in the last world where I went and got that car, but then I didn't know where the car was, and it was in this other garage place that I didn't realize. And
it does hard cuts on the cutscenes that we'd mentioned before, where it'll just like spring up, here's where you need to go next, and it'll do a fade to black and then go back to your character. And it's like, I have no reference point as to where my character is in relation to what I just saw.
And there's no map in the game, is there?
There's no map, no. And it doesn't do the visual thing we talked about before that I think games like Mario Sunshine, Mario Odyssey do, where they zoom in on the thing or a point that you need to like interact with, and then they pan out, and then it pans all the way back to Mario, and you think, right, I've got a reference point for where I am in relation to that point of interest, and this game doesn't do that, and that's one thing I would have liked to have seen it do. It sounds like a small thing, but actually saves you 20 minutes of roaming around an area looking for the relevant place.
For sure, yeah. I think it can go on the list. I think you're going to be mad if it's not on the list. So I think it probably...
I'd like it in the discussion alongside Splatoon 3 and Ollie Ollie World at the moment, but it's not a lock by any means.
Yeah, let's put it in there. I think it deserves a shout out for sure. And I really enjoyed it, I think when I first started playing it, again, my priorities in these games are, can I move quickly? And they gave me a soap bar to move quickly, and I was like, all right, good game. Game is good. I'm here for it. So yeah, it's great. Okay, there's lots of stuff here that I've played that I think I need to make some decisions about what makes it and what doesn't. Triangle Strategy is going to make my top 10. Triangle Strategy is really fucking good, and I definitely love it more than Live Alive. Live Alive I think is cool, and I think Live Alive is a good RPG from that era, and they modernized it and they made it look cool, and it has a lot of variety. I personally didn't love the back half of Live Alive. If I hadn't had 2 4-hour train journeys where I was kind of forced to play it, I feel like I would have put it down, honestly. I don't know that I really ever wanted to go back to it after that point, because once you go through that section of...
I'm surprised the guy who plays all of these ridiculously old JRPGs on like your Ambernick and is just willing to grind through random ass caves and put on a podcast.
Yeah.
And obviously you have to hold modern games to a higher standard, so I'll give you that. But I'm surprised that repelled you so much in that way.
Well, I think the reason is because I can kind of cheat in those games. I can use save states and stuff, right. Like it's such a more seamless experience in those old games, because you can kind of like make your own way through it in that way, where Live Live doesn't have that. It's an old game that's been made look new and still has all the problems of like it's hard to it's harder to go back to, I guess. And I don't think the game is like overly challenging or anything, and I think it definitely isn't. It's not as combat focused as you might think. I think because of how segmented everything is at the beginning, it doesn't allow you to kind of create a party of characters that you level up throughout the game. You just kind of, you get to a stopping point with them, and then, you know, it's a little bit the Octopath Traveler problem, where I unlocked a character in that kind of last segment and they were still level 3 and everyone else is level 10. I'm like, well, this is stupid. Why didn't you just make everyone the same level, you know, going into this last section? Because it just feels off. It just feels unbalanced in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. And yeah, so there were issues I had, but I did like the ending, and I thought it was worth doing and going through. And some of those kind of like dungeons were interesting, but it felt like it fell off a cliff when it came to narrative stuff. Like the narrative stuff was so interesting and cool for the first half of the game, and so diverse, and then at the end it just kind of coalesces into something a bit more generic, and, you know, in a way similar to the end of some other big RPGs where, like Final Fantasy VI, we've always talked about as the first half is so narrative focused and like kind of singular and very linear in a way, and then the back half is like you have a lot of optional stuff you can do, and it doesn't quite cohere in the same way, and it's basically get everyone together to fight Kefka, and that's the kind of culmination of it. But there's not a lot of story beats, and this is kind of what this felt like. It's kind of a sign of the times, I guess, where they were doing this. And yeah, I know you like Live Alive a lot and definitely rank it very highly. So
I agree with you about the second half, or like last third of the game, and I think that the story beat at the end, the finale, is worth it. Like, I think it's a really cool plot twist and what it's doing with the characters and the main enemy at that point in time, and I really, really love that stuff narratively. But there is like a grindy section that could have been remedied, honestly. Like, as you say, like once you play the 7 chapters with the 7 characters, if they could have been a more relevant or closer level to, say, the final battle, that section could have been hours shorter, and then you go from this fresh 7 character thing into playing as the other character, and then into the final boss, and there could have been a lot less downtime where it is a lot more traditional, where you're grinding, that you're in this, on top of it being traditional, you're in a fantasy setting on top of that, and as much as I love that world and I love that ending, that section could have just been a lot shorter. And I didn't mind it a ton in the moment, but I definitely was like, right, get out the guides. Who am I getting? How do I put my team together? How do we do this? And then it was like, wow, this has gone from like really modern take on a traditional JRPG to right back to its traditional roots and kind of like a heartbeat, which was a shame. I still really love this game. I think the music is phenomenal. I think the freshness, especially for the first 2/3, first half of the game, is really great. I think the narrative beats, especially at the end, are great. I really loved all that stuff. Again, HD, like, this HD 2D has come on a long way since Octopath Traveler, and I think this game really does showcase that you can do a lot more than just the Octopath Traveler style in HD 2D. Like, HD 2D isn't one homogenous thing, and this game really showcased like really different, vibrant locations that were so fresh and interesting, and the game definitely deserves credit for that. Overall, I think I'd love to push this, try and scrape this game into like the number 10 slot, but I totally appreciate there's a lot of games to talk through. I would vouch that we stick it up for now, and then it might drop out later.
It's really hard. I think we're in this place where we have these pairs of games where, like, we have the 2D HD twins, we have the 2 Pokemon games, and we have anime bullshit category with Bayonetta and AI the Somnium Files.
I do think Triangle Strategy can sit higher than Live Alive. I think you care about that game a lot more than I care about Live Alive.
So Triangle Strategy came out around the same time as Elden Ring, and I actually went back to Edinburgh like just soon after Elden Ring came out. So I was like, oh well, I can't play Elden Ring, but let's play Triangle Strategy. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I'm looking forward to playing this because I'm enjoying it. And I fucking devoured Triangle Strategy. I spent like 50 hours with that thing over a week when I was back home, and it was so good. Like, I do think that the game gets rightly criticized for how wordy it is, because it's fucking wordy. It just like...
Are there narrative payoffs for that wordiness, or are you left feeling a bit like, ugh, it could have been leaner?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I think there's some interesting stuff, and I think it's cool from a political standpoint and from like a world standpoint. Like, there's some interesting stuff that happens. I do think that they They could have just slimmed down. They needed an editor, basically, is what they needed. But I do think that what happens is interesting, and it also varies depending on your choices, right? Like, there are 3 different endings you could get that are pretty significantly different, as well as multiple branching paths throughout the whole game. It's probably about 7 or 8 maps that I haven't seen in this game because of choices I made. I was looking on a website of like, here are all the different branching points, and like, you could get this if you take this choice and this choice, get this map. And sometimes there are 3 map options depending on what you've chosen, and it's wild. It's really, really cool that it has such variability. And like, I started a New Game Plus run as soon as I'd finished, which I never do, and obviously, I didn't go through with it because I don't have time for that, but I was so enamored with it that I pushed myself to do that. And I think for me, where Mario and Rabbids fails on a tactical front because it's too easy, Triangle Strategy is fucking hard, and I loved that it was fucking hard, like, I really relish the challenge. And there were multiple situations where you just have to think differently from Fire Emblem, right? Because there's no permadeath. And so you have to sacrifice people, like, there were multiple maps where I had one character left. Everyone else was fucking dead, and I had one character.
But that's how I play Fire Emblem sometimes.
Yeah,
I just have one character left.
And I was I was eking it out. I had like this spot that I got to, and I was like baiting people over, slowly going away out of range, and then killing them, and like, it really is a tremendous strategy RPG from a gameplay perspective. And personally, the dialogue stuff didn't bother me that much, right? Like, it was like, okay, cool, it's going a bit long, but I don't know. I didn't find as much of a turn-off as I think a lot of people did. And I think
it's a game I definitely would have played this year if I had less baby and more time.
Exactly, yes.
It was high. I had a list of games just specifically for, like, I call them 2022 subs, and this is like top of my subs list for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So the question is, do we want to put both games on the list, or do we want to, because I kind of want to have a Pokemon game on this list,
Let's put up Triangle Strategy for now. Okay. Live Alive sits in this bottom category for now, but it doesn't become red, and we need to just hash out we'll make a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think I feel more passionately about stuff like Bayonetta and Pokemon than I do about Kirby, and I think Kirby we've both played, and Kirby we both really like, and Kirby, I think, might not make the list. I don't know how you feel about it. Like, I would love to have Kirby on this list.
The first 3 hours of Kirby were just like, this is fantastic. Like, this is so good. And then there's a long period of that game where you're like, okay, here's now we're in the lava area, but now we're still using all the old transformations, and then the ending hits. You're like, wow, that was a really cool ending. That was a really unexpected ending. But then my overriding feeling with the game is, God, the media are much hotter on this game than me, and I'm meant to be like a 3D platformer person. And like,
we just have higher taste.
Higher taste. I think the Mario Odyssey comparisons fall quite flat after the first 3 hours, and that's
because it stops doing new stuff, basically, right? Like, Mario Odyssey is new for 10 hours, and Kirby is like new for about 3 hours. Then it's like, we're kind of going to do the same thing for a few more hours.
But a game like Tinykin reminds me that half the joy of Odyssey is actually the exploration and size of the world. Yeah. And it's not just about the abilities. Kirby's like, here's the abilities, but also we're not going to give you constant fresh abilities because that would just be crazy. And Mario Odyssey is like, lol, we've got fresh abilities, plus we've got these large worlds, plus we've got all this exploration, go have fun. And Tinykin and Kirby make me realize I much prefer the exploration and that scope of 3D platforming, perhaps more so than abilities. And that's not to say like the abilities in Odyssey make the traversal and discovery more exciting. But then a much more linear game like Kirby makes you also realize you kind of need a larger world to explore with these abilities. It's not... Sure, there's a nice power trip when you become a vending machine and start attacking enemies, but you don't get that the 5th time you use that ability. You get it like the first few times, and then you're like... Whereas when you turn into like a little bird in Mario Odyssey that you then like catapult yourself up vertically... That never gets old. And I think that it's easy to talk about abilities in the same scope, but I think the abilities in Odyssey are a hell of a lot more interesting and exciting than Kirby. And
I like the evolution to weapons, though. It feels like a power trip that you go on, and I know you didn't unlock all of them. I did. I unlocked every evolution for all the weapons.
I just did a handful, but yeah.
Because I did all of the side little missions where you get coins or bonus stuff for doing all those little side extra bonus missions in the overworld, and they were all really fun. They're just like mini challenges that you do based around each weapon, and they each have like individual kind of challenges that are crafted to those specific needs. And yeah, I think it is a really cool. I would really like to see it on this top 10. It's just a question of can we justify it over things? Yeah. I think Kirby is really good, but I think we have stronger individual passions for other things. We do.
It's the exact game I'd want to see at number 11 if it meant Live Alive was 10. But I would make Kirby red just now, arguably. But I'm happy to leave it in the discussion for now.
I think we have to make some choices. I think we have to start making choices here. And
it's the first big tough decision, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to let Kirby go.
I'm such a negative Nelly about the game. Honestly, I think it's a really great game.
It's really good.
It's so good that Kirby is in 3D finally, and the music, the level design is really good. I just wanted more abilities and more freshness in the middle of that game. But yeah, it's still a really great game.
It's fantastic. It's so good.
What did it win? It won Family Game of the Year. It was a worthy winner.
Yeah. So I think we have 2 slots left available for this list. I want one of them to be a Pokemon game. Now, in my own personal top 10 list, I'm likely going to cheat and just put them both together because
that is very cheaty.
Oh, I don't give a shit. It's my own list. I can do what I like.
I thought they were very different games, but
they are. But I think they both play in similar spaces because they're both expanding the idea of what a Pokemon game can be in different ways, but also in similar ways. Like, open world is really the crux of both of these games, and they both handle it slightly differently. Legends Arceus being a bit more Monster Hunter style, like segmented open world, versus Scarlet and Violet, which is true open world. I think I have to choose between these, and for me, I think that Arceus probably takes it, if only because it was the first one that did it, and I think Arceus goes further. Arceus goes further than Scarlet and Violet does because it tries to change up the formula for what a Pokemon game could look like.
Battle-wise as well.
Yeah, but beyond just the traditional gym structure and stuff like that. And I know Scarlet and Violet switches things up. And in all honesty, I think I probably enjoyed Scarlet and Violet more just because the new Pokemon, Arceus is obviously, it's all old Pokemon, right? So there's no freshness from that perspective. But I think it's...
If Scarlet and Violet ran well, would it be above Arceus in a heartbeat? Or
I don't necessarily think so, no, because I think that what Arceus does from a gameplay level, the very idea of just being able to sneak around grass and physically throw a Pokeball at something without having to throw something out to fight it to reduce its HP, and like having little tactics that go around that, where I remember a video I took of baiting a Pokemon over with like some kind of berry or whatever, right? Like Arceus make Pokemon feel alive in the way that they're moving around and they're living, and they will react to things and they will fucking attack you. You see an Ursa ring and it gets mad and it will run into you and it can knock you the fuck out and you have to go back to a campsite. Like it actually feels there's a danger to the world in Arceus that is really cool. And just like the idea, I can't remember what it was, but there's a really hard to catch Pokemon, and I was like very slowly waiting for it to turn around because they're different balls have different properties. So the heavy balls, when you throw them, they barely go anywhere. It's like trying to throw a really heavy shot put and it goes like less than a meter in front of you. That's what these heavy balls are like. And there's a mega heavy balls that are even better, and you get a higher chance of catching a Pokemon if you catch it from behind. And so I was just waiting for my moment. It's hiding in this grass. This Pokemon comes, it turns around, and I just slowly sneak out and throw this really heavy ball at it. And it's really hard to catch Pokemon, but because I have that, advantage of being behind it didn't see me, and I'm so close, and I got the heavy ball to hit, I caught it first time, and I was like, holy shit, that feels so good, right? It's so different, and it gives me a different type of satisfaction than other Pokemon games do. And I think it's hard because I've played Scarlet and Violet so much more recently that the freshness of the new Pokemon and the weird ending of that game and like some of the narrative elements are really cool. Like there's loads of great stuff Scarlet and Violet is doing. I still think Scarlet and Violet has room for improvement with like the towns are big, but they're empty. There's like nowhere you can go and interesting. There's no side quests that are interesting. You know, I see there's improvement. I see there's more improvement, I think, for Scarlet and Violet. Leaving aside the technical issues, I see from a gameplay perspective, they've really nailed it, but I still think there's even more room for improvement. And Arceus, I think, also has room for improvement, but I think it impacted me more. It surprised me more out the gate. And I think Arceus, like, brought me back to the franchise in a way that Scarlet and Violet... I don't know that Scarlet and Violet... I would have been as excited for if Arceus hadn't happened, because Arceus showed a blueprint for what could be possible, and then they kind of built a little bit on top of that and changed certain things. But, you know, I do think Arceus is probably the one I want to vouch for here, so I would like to have that in the top 10.
Should we do one up, one down?
Yeah, so let's move Arceus up, I think, and let's move Pokemon Scarlet and Violet down. And yeah, you know, Scarlet and Violet still really good. Probably, if we're talking like traditional Pokemon games, the best in a decade by far. And if it didn't have the technical issues, it's another thing of like, do we really want to reward the game with its technical issues? I don't know. It feels a little bit bad as well. But Arceus is a better looking game and it's a better running game. And it just really feels innovative.
Do you think they would have got any less stick for Scarlet and Violet had Arceus come out with either not come out or come out with more issues? You know what I mean? Like, did they prove that, oh yeah, you can actually do like Pokemon Open World and it run okay on Switch, and then to drop the ball later in the year?
Yeah, well, I think Arceus, as I said, it's more segmented, and there are some frustrations with that where like I can't go from one hub to another hub. I can't just fast travel on the map, which is stupid. I have to go back to the main base area, then I have to go out again. And the other thing I forgot to mention, like the side quests in Arceus are so good. Like they're little... they actually have characters with like interesting things that live in the village, and they ask you like weird stuff about what type of Pokemon they want to see and stuff, like, because everyone's afraid of Pokemon at this point, right? It's set in the past, and so no one knows what's going on, and everyone's like terrified of them as like dangerous creatures and stuff, and people just want to know things. People want to research them. People are like, can you find a big one of these? And you got to go find a big one. And like there's like a farming patch where you get Pokemon and you put them on the farming patch and stuff like that. There's lots of interesting little things that make it stand out and made me want to go and do all the side quests. Like there's a bit of a traditional open world side quest thing to it, that all the side quests are really engaging and fun. And yeah, I think thinking back on it more now, because I had forgotten a lot of this stuff because it's been so long, it was literally the start of this year. It's so good. It's really good. So I want to reward it. So we should have it on this list. Okay. The question is, what else makes it on? And you know, I would love it to be Bayonetta 3, but I appreciate you have Live Alive here that you really want to vouch for. So it's hard. It's a hard question. I'm going to say AI the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative. Loved it. Love these games. I don't think it's as good as the first one personally, and I think the first one I already gave its flowers in my my GOTY to GOTY list last time, and I think that game could have had a bit more punch to its main narrative. The twist is very cool, but as I said, it's more of a meta twist, and so it doesn't really affect the characters so much as it affects the player, and I wish something had affected the characters a bit more, but I still think it's really good. I think it's going to be very hard for me to get it on this list given what we already have, and given that I think you're very much wanting Live Alive on here and I very much want Bayonetta on here, and we kind of have to make a hard choice, I think. So
okay,
I'm going to move AI Somnium Files down, but yeah, I think it's tremendously good still. Very, very enjoyable. Okay. What do we do? Is there anything you want to move down if we want to move both these up? Like, is it a question of you want Live Alive if I've got Triangle Strategy there, or is it, do I have to make a Triangle Strategy?
There's a number of
decision?
options.
Yeah.
Either we go for one or the other.
Yeah.
Or we go for neither. We pull something we maybe agree on more jointly from down below.
Okay.
Or we pull something from up, top, down, and both get in. I think those are the three options.
I don't think we can pull anything from up, top, down, can we?
I don't think so.
Looking at these games,
it's too solid. It's too agreed. I think all those games we've already talked about, apart from maybe the top four, to some degree, where we're like, right, they definitely need to be there. So I don't think that's happening. You're right.
Yeah.
And if there was a game we'd jointly push up, I think it would probably be Kirby.
It'd be Kirby, but like, do you feel good about that? I don't feel great about that.
I would feel better with one of these other two.
Yeah.
Tell me about Bayonetta 3. I know you talked about
I just did.
segment,
Yeah, I think I just did. I think the other thing to mention about Bayonetta 3 that I didn't talk about was the weapons. There are so many fucking weapons in this game that are just bonkers. One of them is a microphone, okay? And Bayonetta just sings in this microphone, and you just swing it around like a weirdo. One of the summons in this game is a literal fucking clock tower, okay? This clock tower comes out the ground and just starts attacking enemies. It has arms, it has machine guns on it, it has laser beams. It's a fucking clock tower. Another weapon is there are these two fans that you use, and you kind of use them like a bird, like a kind of like weird ostrich. There's these giant fucking slabs that you use. There's a train. A train is a weapon. There's this giant fucking thing that has razor blades on it that you hit people with, and it's a big slow weapon. And then if you combo with it, you literally turn into a train and start smashing into people as a train. It goes off the literally off the rails when it comes to these weapons, and I really think they add such a fresh, fun variety. Every level I was switching up my weapon because I was getting new ones and all that sort of stuff. And it's fun because it's kind of a multiverse story, so you see different versions of Bayonetta. Like there's the Egyptian version of Bayonetta, and there's Bayonetta who's a magician. That's another one. You get a magician's hat with a staff, and you start throwing bats at people, like doing magic basically. And then you also take pictures like with a camera. It's just fucking weird. Like all these weapons are such a fun element of the game that I think really brought it up for me and just made it feel different when you're playing through and fresh. And
do you prefer it to 2?
I don't know, because the thing with 2 was it was such a unique new experience for me, and I kind of blasted through it, and I don't remember a lot about 2, if I'm honest, right? I played it on easy, and I just kind of like smashed buttons and didn't think too much, and I was like, wow, this is crazy stuff happening. I think 2 probably, as I said, has a bit bigger spectacle at the end. But the thing is, like, there's just such variety in 3. Like, there's a moment where, Madame Butterfly, your big god lady, you turn into her, and she's literally the size of, I don't know, a city, and she's just like lying in the clouds, and you're being attacked by helicopters and tanks, and she's just like blowing bubbles as if she's in a bubble bath, and you're controlling this. It's like a shooter, and you're shooting out these bubbles, and these bubbles are destroying these fucking enemies that are coming at you. And there's another section where you're literally on a tank and a giant dragon is chasing you and you're shooting it with the machine guns from it. There's a section where it turns into a top-down shmup, and you're going through these tunnels and avoiding all this stuff. There's a section where you have a summon who's a frog, and the frog turns into a beautiful opera singer with an umbrella, and the music the opera singer sings coincides with these bats that are flying at you, and you have to press B, X, and Y to switch to these mirrors which block bats coming at you, but you block them in rhythm as she's singing. So the idea is she's singing these bats to death because you're kind of rhythmically stopping them with these kind of bubble shields around you. So it just becomes a rhythm game. I think that variety for me is what makes it stand above 2. 2 has big spectacle and big fights. But this, I think, has more different stuff every time you jump. Like, every time I jumped into a level, I was always like, oh, it's probably just going to be, some fights going through this place. But it would constantly surprise me every single time. And I think for me, that's why I like it so much. And yeah, I think it's very, very good.
All right. I could probably sacrifice Live Alive, and then we can stick Bayonetta 3 in there.
Do you need a trade of some kind later to do that sacrifice?
Yeah, I might need a little help with boosting something later or something. Okay. I don't know. I can't tell what it's going to be yet.
Yeah.
Can we reach that conclusion maybe?
Yeah, I just don't. I think it's silly, but I kind of don't want to have 2 HD 2D games on this list. That's my only reason not having
so
live.
I hear you.
Yeah.
We've not got 2 Pokemon games. We've not got 2 2D HD games.
Yeah,
so.
Okay. Like I think like the variety speaks. That's kind of the reason I would like, and I'm totally fine to have Bayonetta lower down the list. That's totally cool. But I do think, and maybe it's just because I've just literally finished it last night, and I'm still kind of living in the afterglow of Bayonetta 3. But I really
think
like
already
it.
Compared to where Bayonetta 2 was on like your list when it came out, and
yeah.
I think that's the case for a lot of people, to be honest. I think there's just a level of chatter about Bayonetta 3 which was so different to 2, and
it's hard.
Right.
Is that our
top 10 then? Have I counted it right?
We have 10 games. Shall we take a break and come back and go through them? But do you want to read through what we have at the moment? And then
our 10 games in no particular order other than maybe this top 4, but we can get to that later. Are Xenoblade 3, Tunic, Citizen Sleeper, Cuphead the Delicious Last Course, Splatoon 3, Oli Oli World, Tinykin, Triangle Strategy, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and Bayonetta 3.
Ship it. That's it. Xenoblade as number 1. Perfect. Let's do it. All right. Well, we'll be back after this quick break to order this list and come to a consensus on what our game of the year truly is. See you in a bit. And we're back for the final part of this process, wherein we are going to be figuring out an order for this list, a numbered order, so that we can count them down from 10 to 1. And we just went through them before the break, but Bally, do you want to go through them again just to keep it in top of mind?
Yes, our 10 games, in no particular order as it stands, are Xenoblade 3, Tunic, Citizen Sleeper, Cuphead the Delicious Last Course, Splatoon 3, Oli Oli World, Tinykin, Triangle Strategy, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and Bayonetta 3.
Lovely stuff. It really was the year of the threes, wasn't it? 3 Nintendo 3s in here in this list, which is tremendous to see that trilogies are hitting their stride for sure, which is very, very good. So I think the bottom of this list might be a little easier. I feel like the order we currently have for Bayonetta, Pokemon, and Triangle Strategy probably makes sense, you know? Like, it's a question
they're all
of...
the one-sided... You've played, but I've not played games. Whereas I've played everything else, barring Xenoblade 3. So,
and I think I would be hung, drawn, and quartered for just suggesting Tinykin goes below, you know, any of these games. So that's probably
I'd struggle with that. But if you want to make a case, you can make a case.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I already made a case for like all of these games in different ways. I think for me, Triangle Strategy is the one that stands out as like I really relished the strategy of that experience, and you know, it has its drawbacks certainly, but I think. It's a game that I would want to go back to. I think we talked about at the start of this year of like, well, what if I only owned a Switch and I didn't play on anything else? I would probably, in all honesty, have put 100 hours into Arceus and into Triangle Strategy, because that's all I would have been playing on Switch, right? So I think that says a lot. It speaks a lot.
You mean you wouldn't have been playing any Xenoblade 3?
Well, no, I'm talking about the start of the year.
Okay, right.
That's when these came out at the start of the year. No, yeah. Because I wouldn't have been playing Elden Ring, or I wouldn't have been playing, other games, if I was just still a fresh-faced little Nintendo boy and hadn't ventured out into any other
me 4 years
arenas.
ago, but
Yeah. Then I would have just... And if I wasn't doing this podcast, right? Because if I wasn't doing this podcast, I probably would just put more time into fewer games,
Definitely.
So Triangle Strategy and Arceus... I think because I know that about myself, I would have done that. I think they representationally deserve to be up here for those merits also. So, I think I'm comfortable with saying Bayonetta at number 10, Legends Arceus at number 9, and Triangle Strategy at number 8. Unless you, Bally, have any thoughts about what you think my opinions of those games are and whether you think they should be in a different order. But I think that sounds okay.
I don't know. I think that's pretty fair, I think. I do think these other games are maybe just, if we're talking about joint love of them from the show, I think they are probably a cut above. So I think that's probably a pretty fair 10, 9, 8.
I know you don't want to play Bayonetta 3, but of Triangle Strategy and Legends Arceus, which one are you more interested in playing?
Triangle Strategy.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay.
I'd be tempted to try Legends Arceus. I'm more tempted to play Scarlet Violet, honestly.
Really? Okay.
With an update. I don't know. Maybe you're swinging me around to wanting to play Arceus more, and I know that's already running better than Scarlet Violet, so that's also an appeal.
Yeah, Arceus already runs great. They prioritize frame rate, and sometimes it makes distance not draw and stuff like that not as good. But I think it probably benefits the overall package to be like that.
But I'm hoping Triangle Strategy is maybe a little bit of the Advance Wars itch, and maybe that could have been something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where's Reboot Camp? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, would have been a very different Game of the Year list if Reboot Camp had come out.
If we'd counted it for this list.
Yeah, sure. It's a remake,
would have been debatable, but yeah.
Live counts though because it never came out in the West.
Live counts. Yeah. I'm happy for this 10 to 8.
Okay.
I'd go also and jump in and say I think Tinykin is a good 7.
Oh really? You're okay with leaving it there?
I think so. I think we've got a lot. I mean. Do you prefer Splatoon 3 and Oli World to Tinykin? I mean,
absolutely,
I would definitely prefer Tinykin over those two games, but
I, in fact, would push Oli World higher. It's going to feature probably on my own top 10. I don't think Splatoon 3 makes my own top 10 with all the other games.
Splatoon 3 is on the border for me,
and
then Tinykin's definitely in there, and I don't think Oli World's in my top 10.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Damn. I mean, I think Oli World is a tremendous game. It just feels so good,
But in this discussion, do we agree that the top 4 are cut above what we're discussing now?
I think
we're not pushing anything up or down.
I mean, we made the decision pretty quickly on those, and I think that speaks to their quality. So I think that probably makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm happy if you want to try and push Tinykin up, but I would put Splatoon 3 kind of maybe a bit lower in that case.
I'd be happy with that. We can go Splatoon 3, then Tinykin, then Oli World.
So Splatoon 3 at 7,
yes.
And then Tinykin at 6.
Yes.
Oli World at 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, you happy with that?
Yeah.
I think so. To talk about Splatoon 3, I think it being on this list anyway is an achievement enough, given that it's an iterative sequel. I just thought that single player was outstanding. Yeah, I really did.
Solid Nintendo energy. The award last year goes to Metroid Dread. This year probably goes to Splatoon 3 in terms of that final boss and those final levels of that campaign. It's this is just good modern Nintendo game design.
This is awesome.
You get little doses of this every year, honestly, and that's where they injected a lot of that energy this year, and it really shows.
Yeah, it really does. Any more words to say on Tinykin and its placement here?
We need more open, expansive platforming with interesting ways of platforming around the space and discovery, because Tinykin reminded me that Mario Odyssey is just fantastic, and yeah, it was just a really great game. Nice length as well. It wasn't too long. It was just the right length for me.
Yeah, it's great, and I wish it hadn't made me motion sick. Because again, it's similar to like Portal, where I'm like, I'm really enjoying this. I want to play this longer, but I have to just not. I have to stop myself after like an hour, because otherwise I will move into that weird headache sphere, which I can't deal with. So yeah, it's really good. Like, I think just simple stuff like just collecting the, is it wax? I just called it like golden popcorn. Pollen, that's it. I just called it golden pop. Just the
golden popcorn.
The satisfying feeling of getting the golden popcorn, and just the way in which it almost has a bit of Metroid design, where like you find the silkworms and the string of those like connect. There's always usually like a central hub and like outside areas, and you use those as grind rails to get back.
It's really clever for like a 3D platform where like just this is how we warp between parts of the world. You know, there's not like a separate menu you go to or anything. It's just like you just grind along this bit of thread.
Yeah, instead of having like fast travel, it makes you're never too far away from one of those threads, so you can easily get around quite quickly to places you need to be.
It reminds me of, here's the deep cut, Yoku's Island Express, which is like a pinball Metroidvania. There's like shortcuts in that world where you literally just jump into like it's almost like a tube, and the tube will just suck you up and spit you out, but it's like in world. You don't like go to a menu or anything to do it. It's just like it's like the shortcut just to get to this point in the world. It just felt a bit like that in the 3D space. Good stuff.
It's really great. And Ollie Ollie World, I don't think I've had more fun than that one level going back and forth with you this year. Oh my god, that was good. Just a Twitter thread of just like dropping numbers of like, and we started out and I was like, look at this, I got 12,000.
If you told us at the start what our eventual scores would be, we'd be shocked.
If you told us we both would hit the top 30 in the world of that level, exactly, that's where we got to. Like, I was watching the ghosts of the #1 player just to get tactics to get ahead of Bally, basically. Like, it was so funny though, because I was like, hey, look at this score, and you're like, I just beat it, I got 20,000. I'd be like, I got 50,000. You're like, I have 170. I'm like, I have 290, and it's just just escalation. I think I hit like 700,000 or 800,000 points. I don't think I broke 1 million, but I think I got like 700 and something K. And I think you never got back to me after that. I think you kind of gave in the towel at that point. But it was a great challenge, and I think we should do that again. I think we should, maybe if we both play Neon White, that would be a fun one to go back and forth on.
Well, PC versus Switch, but sure.
That's true. Yeah. But anyway, Ollie Ollie World. What a great saga. I loved it. It was awesome. Okay, so we have our top 4 here. How we feel about it, Bally? The question is...
3, Tunic, Citizen Sleeper, and Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course.
Yeah. I think 4 is the highest Cuphead can go, personally. I don't know how you feel, but...
I'd agree.
I think... I think Cuphead in some ways is the best game I played this year. Like, if it wasn't a DLC, like personally, I'm kind of going back and forth if I want to include it in my own list just because of the DLC thing.
I will personally.
Yeah,
and it's high up.
I think it's like a #1 game if it's not a DLC, Like, it is impeccable. It's fucking perfect.
Yeah, it's glorious. It makes you remember, Cuphead is like just this incredible game that came out. And yes, it's been a very long time since that game came out on Switch. What, did it come out in 2018?
I think a year after its original release.
And the original release was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 2018 on Switch. I remember playing it in Japan and but to come back and then these bosses are actually better than the bosses in the original game as well, generally. And then there's like its own secrets and the levels where you're not even fighting a traditional boss the traditional way, and you're literally just like platforming and retaliating like the pink things and like the chess pieces, I should say. Like, I loved those as well. They were just fantastic. And like, there's a lot of game here. I think there's like 5 to 7 hours depending on your skill level here, and it was just because it was its own island as well. It does feel a little more standalone, and that does give it a sense of it's its own thing, which feels nice when you are playing DLC. I find generally, and I think that yes, this game was talked about a lot of the time, but in Game of the Year discussions, people don't really talk about DLC in the same way. So
No.
The fact that others won't talk about it in Game of the Year is all the more reason I'm like, yes, we need to shout from the rooftops about this DLC because it's really that good. And I think 4 is appropriate, actually.
I think the only reason is that the other games on this are, for me, just a cut above in different ways,
they
you
are.
know?
Yeah. Not that I've played Xenoblade 3, but yeah.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. I think Cuphead is, if we're talking about just like, is there a perfect video game? I think the DLC for Cuphead makes a case of being a literal perfect video game. Like, it's fucking flawless. Like, even the addition of those weird tower levels where you go up the ladder and you go and you fight the you do all the parry stuff. Those parrying levels were so much fun and like a big improvement, I think, on the 2D side-scrolling levels, which I did enjoy in the main game. But I do think that those parry levels were like, it really lent into the strengths of what that game does.
Yeah, the chess pieces, parry levels, like, that was something I had no idea even existed before like playing the game. I thought like, right, we're gonna get 5-6 more just traditional boss fights. It's gonna be great. Even if it was just that, I think it would be high on our list. But the fact they just had this other level of, as you say, I think it mixes up the formula a lot more nicely than just the 2D platforming levels that the first main game had. So yeah, I agree. Like, it was just like a cut above that made it just very cool. And then there's like a final boss. There's even like a hidden final boss, which was also very fun. Really enjoyed that fight, and really innovative, well-designed stuff again. I always think this game, like, you're so focused on the mechanics of it that it can be hard to sit back and enjoy the majesty of the art design, you know? So I definitely think it's a game that's also worth watching some streamers or some Let's Plays of like people.
And there are so many details that
looking
you
at the
miss.
minutiae of the details, exactly. Especially on, like, say, the giant fight. Like, there's like these little gnomes that run around it, and they're the ones that poke the thing through. And hard to explain.
When he pulls off his beard and that's under the level, like, there's so many, like,
and then you go into his mouth, and then you're fighting like his uvula.
Yeah, his uvula is the boss. Like, it's such a good fight. And well, I think one of the things that benefits Cuphead's difficulty is that because you die a lot, you end up fighting them a lot, and so you can almost pay attention to those details. So like every time you get through a phase, you're like, oh, I'm going to look at this part of the screen instead, you know? If you remember to do so, because usually you're sweating like crazy just trying to get through it in the first place.
And when you die, the little meter showing how close you were to the next checkpoint or defeating the boss, like, very simple stuff, but very satisfying. Just, again, such strong game design. Super
interested to see what the studio does next. I know it will be another decade before we see it, but, you know, hey, take your time. If they took their time, it was like 4 years, 5 years to make this DLC, you know, you can just taste the quality. It's very apparent. So yeah, tremendous work, Cuphead. So we've got 3 games here, Bally.
Top 3.
Question is, how much can I get away with is the question. I mean, Xenoblade 3 is my number 1 with a fucking bullet, and like unquestionably. But I appreciate that, you know, we both love these other 2 games as well. So it's a question of where do things land, you know? How do you feel, Bally?
If it was just me, I'd obviously put Xenoblade 3. Well, it wouldn't be on the list. I've not played it, but Tunic's my game of the year. Like, Tunic is really, really special. I'd have it at number 1 in a heartbeat. And Citizen Sleeper deserves to be up here, so it'd be my number 2. And even on a Nintendo list, Citizen Sleeper is very high on my list. Yeah,
I agree. Maybe we just talk through each game, and then we just kind of figure it out.
Citizen Sleeper.
Yeah, Citizen Sleeper.
It gets the point it's trying to make across. It does a narrative that it demonstrates through video game mechanics, and I think again that demonstrates it's like a unique form of storytelling when in video games, when you can blend narrative and mechanics in a unique way that only video games can do, and I love it for that. And it's not just doing that; it's doing it at multiple levels where there are the stresses and strains of your character owing someone money, and then there's like a counter in days that tell you, like, in this number of days they're gonna basically come and kill you, or you need to grow stuff on, like in your greenhouse. You grow your mushrooms, grow your fungi, and it's a bit more like Stardew Valley, those mechanics where it is a lot more relaxed, and it's like, I'm growing stuff to make these, to trade, to make money. But then you've also got the stress of, oh, I need to like essentially pay my rent, and there's this payment. So you got all these different, I say all these different meters.
There's a bounty hunter after you at one point. There's like multiple stresses that kind of inflict upon you, and multiple timers that are always in motion and in play. And you have some control over what you can do, but ultimately it's about survival in those initial opening parts. And it's like you have to decide between medicine and between, a safe place to sleep or like food or whatever. And like the way that it uses those and the way that it narratively gets across that feeling through your limited resources and your limited abilities, it's just exceptional work. But
even me not being it, there was one mission I failed where I couldn't pay the guy my rent or something, and like I felt sorry for him because it wasn't like he was some very wealthy landlord or something. Like he was just trying to get by as well. And I definitely felt that guilt where I couldn't pay him. And there was some line he said when that mission failed, like, "Oh well, I was hoping more." And then he said something like, "Don't worry about it. I'm sure." He says something along the lines of, "I'm sure I'll be able to make ends meet." But he says it in a way where he won't, kind of thing. And you're left feeling, "Oh god, that was a real gut punch."
Right, like it's a game where failure is just moved on from, and you just have to deal with the consequences of failure.
Yeah.
Which I think is tremendous.
Like affording medicine and stuff like this, and there's so much to stress about, but there is joy in overcoming a lot of those challenges and interacting with so many different characters and how they live in this. It's quite a cyberpunky kind of world, I guess, and it's just an immaculately told story with so many different quest lines and they all link to that core day-night cycle. It's an incredibly impressive game.
The writing is just like on another level. It is, I think, again, something that I don't really shout out much about this game, but is such a whole part of the experience. The music is awesome. Like it's so understated, but it like has that melancholic feeling, that kind of ethereal space vibe, and it's such a good accompaniment to the writing, especially with like characters like Memphis at the bar who you get your noodles from at the beginning. And he's like, "Hey, Sleeper, tell me a story," right? Like, and his kind of like open ear to you as you kind of like relay memories of your former life, because you're an android, but you're created from the memories or like the brain of somebody who is trying to make their own ends meet, by selling themselves essentially as a worker in this way. But you're also different from that person. You aren't that person. You're your own being, and all those things. And then the ending of his story where he kind of tells you about his life and his background, like, hits so fucking hard, man. It's such a tremendously set up game, and like I think for me the nice payoff about that is you talk to him a bunch at the beginning and it takes you a long time because he wants these specific mushrooms, right? And you don't get these specific mushrooms until right near the end of the game, and so you almost come full circle with him and he becomes this kind of like this kind of loop back to the beginning. And so many characters, so many different endings and options you have to like, do I leave the station here? Do I do this or do I do that? And for me, I never left until right at the very end. The last choice that I had with the characters that I cared the most about, and like it was the perfect ending for me. Like it really just sent it off in such a beautiful way. I think this game is just so good, and in a year when narrative games have really come to the forefront with stuff like Norco and with Pentiment, it really, for me, is the one that stands head and shoulders above the rest on so many levels. I think just, as you said, mechanically with the dice rolls and the way that factors into like some days you wake up and you're just not there, and that is represented in like the 1s and 2s that you'll have, and you're like, well, I can't really just do much today. It's kind of a wash, and that's just how life is sometimes.
But there's also a gamble when you attempt to do stuff with those low dice rolls, and they can really you can injure yourself essentially, and really hurt yourself, and that'll cost you a lot more in the long run. So.
Yeah, making bad decisions, making risky decisions just for the sake of trying to stay alive in this world. I highly, strongly recommend people check this out. I feel like there's a good amount of people talking about it, but I still think it's flying under the radar for certain people. So, yeah, it's so good and deserves to be recognized. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not getting higher than these top two.
Yeah, I don't think so. And here's the thing, Bally. I would be an asshole and try and debate you to get Xenoblade 3 be number 1, but I don't think that would be representative of our combined list.
Hey, I dropped Live for this.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
Shit, okay?
Exactly. No, I totally get it. And Bally, like, the night when I discovered what the golden path was, I don't think I will have a memory like that in video games for a long time.
Yeah.
I felt like a fucking madman. I literally stayed up until 2 a.m. going around the world looking at these things and being like, oh shit, this means that means this. I following these fucking fairies around to these hidden areas to do these puzzles with these things, and just the whole thing, and then putting it together and each element slotting into place, having this madman fucking map that I was looking at on my sheet of paper with scrawls and letters and just everything, and then entering it, inputting it, and the thing opening and me being just like elated. It is like Tunic, I think, for me the thing that holds it back is the start of the game, not the start of the game, but like there's a kind of a middle point of the game where it's very combat focused and you are kind of just going through like the last area, trying to get the last kind of like, you know, it's like Ocarina of Time where you get the 3 gems, right, to open the Temple of Time. You're kind of doing that, and you do that, and then you get there, and there's lots of hard fights, and I was like, okay, like I'm enjoying this, and it's really good, and I think a lot of the kind of the manual, just the idea of the manual is great, and I think that is it's like one of the layers of secrets in this game.
The original breadcrumbing in that first 5 hours, I'd say, is like very well done by the manual. Like that it feels like perfect, just small bits of secrets, like gradually rolling them out, and you're learning about the world, and it's a very tight-knit world. That in and of itself is like a Zelda game beyond what 2D Zelda's ever done. Like that already, just that little thing is interesting. I agree with you on the combat. I jived a lot more with the combat. I liked it a lot. I still think the combat of like a ton of other top D Zelda style games, like I don't know, Death's Door, Hyperlight Drifter,
Unsighted as well.
Unsighted, exactly. I think they all have stronger combat.
Agreed. Yes.
This game, the combat could have been a little less brutal because it's mechanically not quite what it needs to be for what it's going for.
There's like there's a kind of brutal difficulty. Like I missed the gun. I never got the gun in this game. I think that didn't help me against the boss of that kind of crystal area, that third boss. I think I fought him for about an hour, and eventually I was like, this is pointless. Let me just get through this because I want to see, because people have been talking about other stuff in this game, and let me just get through and see that stuff. And and that's the nice thing about Tunic is it's fine with you doing that. It's like, go ahead, turn on invincibility, see if I care.
It's the combat in that sense, and the brutality of it's actually a lot like Elden Ring, and like but mechanically it's not quite there compared to a game.
Honestly,
like
I think Tunic's harder than Elden Ring on a combat level. Like it really is. Like it was very difficult for me to get into, but you know, as you saying, like the manual at that point in the game has like little secrets of like, when I got the page where I was like, oh, hold down this button for a period of time when you're at this specific place, I was like, oh, I could have done this the whole time. Oh, you know,
the reveals are so satisfying.
Yeah, and those are just the little reveals, you know, and then fucking shit gets real, man. Then shit gets real, and, you know, after I had done it, I remember, you know, getting on Skype with you that night and being like, all right, Bally, I don't want to tell you what it is, but I need to get you in a direction to where you need to think about what's going on here. And it took a while, and there were a lot of dead ends, and I was like, I can't, I want you to try and get to it. It's so hard to, like, say it without saying it. And I think eventually we found a way. I think I might have told you a bit more than I wanted to, but eventually I set you on the path. I set you on the golden path, and then I let you run, and I let you do the rest. And I think it is the greatest puzzle in video games. Like it is so tremendous and outstanding and satisfying, and it is the definition of hidden in plain sight. And when you realize what is going on, just chef's kiss. Holy shit. It's so good. So I think that's an argument for why Tunic should be our joint, probably.
Yeah,
of the year.
it's It's really good. Without even all that golden path stuff, I think this game would be damn high on my list, if not the top. But with it, it's for me a lock. It's really, really special. And I like I said, I jived with the combat a lot more. I got stuff like the gun. I beat every single boss in this game, barring the absolute final boss. And you don't even have to beat them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I didn't. So
yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
So. This game is just so phenomenal. And I remember playing the demo, and we were both a bit like, it's fine. And the thing about that demo was it was basically purely mechanical. Like there wasn't like working out any of the secrets, and because it was in like a specific part of the world, it wasn't like we were discovering different parts of the world, which is also like a joy of this game, where you're like, oh, look at this new area and how it links to this area and the secrets of getting to this area. And but that trajectory of just it, on the face of it, it seems like it's like Zelda, where you collect the 3 things, it progresses to the next stage, but even doing those things is done in such a unique, subtle, interesting, different way.
Just like the perspective of the world design and how it hides stuff from you know, like, because that plays into some of the later puzzles as well, of like, there's a part of a wall that then goes around a corner and there's more stuff on the side of the wall, you know, like stuff like that is that you don't notice when you're playing through, because as I said, everything is hidden in plain sight. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
And it actually reveals an incredibly dark narrative that is darker than anything in any Zelda, honestly, and darker than most games of that style I can think of. Super dark, but
the true ending is great though, right? Like the way that it wraps it up is really beautiful.
Really true ending.
It's amazing.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
And of course, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, my personal game of the year, one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, what more can I say about this game? I've gushed about it endlessly on this show, but I wanted something from this series that would recapture the feeling that I had in the first game, of that adventure, that sense of the world and the characters and the narrative, all of it coming together. And Xenoblade 2 just didn't do it. You know, Xenoblade 2 is a great game and it has fantastic combat, but I didn't care about any of the people. I thought the voice acting was not great. The writing just wasn't there. And it feels like they looked at that game and they're like, okay, what if we make a true sequel to the first game? And Xenoblade 3 feels like that in every fucking sense, and then some. Like, this is the best cast in any of those games. It's one of my favorite casts in RPGs generally. The whole idea that you fight with all 6 at once is just like, it sounds like it would be chaos, and in some ways it kind of is chaos, but it's like a fun chaos, and it connects you even more so to them and what they're going through in their journey, because this is a story rich with emotion and meaningful moments, and from the beginning it's just a premise that gets you this idea that these people live in this world, they live for 10 years, they're born at age 10 basically, and then they die, and then there's nothing you can do about it. And this whole, like, the sense of what do you do with that time, what is it meaningful, like what do you leave behind, the whole idea of Mio having such little time left and how that plays into their relationships and everything going on. It is filled with moments of pure joy and awe, but sadness and just depression and just absolute hopelessness. Chapter 5 is maybe my favorite sequence in all of games. Narratively, it is absolutely untouchable. It just goes above and beyond on a level that I have hardly seen games attempt. And the way music ties into the narrative of this game is so special. Like the flute, what the flute represents, the way in which the two sides of the conflict, their melodies intertwine with one another to create that sense of symbiosis. It is just divine, like how it like weaves its way into the story and just leaves you speechless in so many moments. The even just the hype moments of boss fights, where like I've never been that into like music that's for bosses generally in games, because I don't think it kind of suits my sensibilities, but these boss fight music, fucking incredible stuff, just like stratospherically on another level, which is why I'm so even more annoyed that it didn't win Best Music at the Game Awards. It's just like, how can you listen to this and not just be in awe of what Yasunori Mitsuda and his team have put together? Because it's just absolutely stunning. The sense of scale, the thing that I love about Xenoblade, the whole exploration of the world. There are the places you go to that are just like, how is this fucking huge? It just defies belief. There are bigger games out there, but I don't think there is any series, any game that gives you that sense of size in the same way that Xenoblade does. It's just truly remarkable when it comes to that stuff. And combat-wise, it just feels sublime. It's a distillation of what they've built up to from the MMO style, with 2 adding in a much more kind of streamlined version, and now having that play into it with the Ouroboros forms. Chain attacks are just off the chain, frankly. Like, you can absolutely destroy this game with chain attacks. I know a lot of people were annoyed that, you can over level very easily and stuff like that, and I certainly ran into it a little bit, and I definitely held back on the bonus experience, because if you go whole hog with that, you're just going to be super over leveled. But I kind of like kept it at a good pace, and holy shit, like, side quests have always been bad in Xenoblade, and like, they're the one thing in the series where you're like, yeah, you can kind of ignore them. There are lots of fetch quests and stuff. Every colony you go to, like, I have identifiable NPCs from each colony, and each colony is so different. There's so many of them, and each side quest is like worth doing. They all have interesting stories to them. Adding on the heroes, having the idea of these heroes that join along with your quest, and each of them have fully voice acted side quests that feel like if you don't do them, you're missing out on main stuff. Like, some of them, like Ashera's one, that you have 2 of them. You have like an Ascendant quest as well, so you have like multiple of these. Like, one of my favorite moments in the game, and just the characters, I love how goofy they are. I love the fucking lines they say. Senna saying, "I'm the girl with the gall." You've got fucking Uni talking about Lands wanting something a bit meatier, like these fucking memes. It's so good. Uni's an incredible character, so fucking funny, but also has like these deep emotional moments as well. Every member in the cast stands out, and the relationship they build between Noah and Mio especially is just phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about Xenoblade 3. I am extremely excited for what they do in terms of DLC, because I think there's a lot of ways they can go, and I think it just hits heights that Nintendo games never do, because Nintendo games don't prioritize narrative in any way, and I'm so glad that Monolith Soft exists to do that for them, because they really are leading the pack here when it comes to like the top tier of RPGs. It ticks off everything on my list, and is a stunning achievement, and I think it should be number 1, but it's not going to be, because I think we've decided that I can't put something at number 1 that you haven't played, we did once
a long time ago. I think it was Fire Emblem Fates Conquest,
but that was a much weaker year, and I think it was only a top 5.
I mean, the gaming scene and the games that we're playing since 2015 is like just changed so much, hasn't it?
Dramatic change, dramatic, and
okay, look away. I'm about to put Tunic at number 1.
Oh my god! All right, I'll take it. I can deal with it. It's okay. It's fine. I can handle Xenoblade being number 2. Like, I think the fact that it is number 2 speaks to how much I love this game, because I don't think a game that I've played and you have no interest in playing would ever make it this high if it wasn't for that kind of overwhelming.
I don't want to try and push for other games above it. I think I need to respect.
It's a rare exception, It's rare that it happens, but I think it's worth doing. So, I think we have a ordered top 10 list.
Are we happy with the order?
How do you feel about Splatoon 3? Because I don't know, is it a triangle strategy behind Splatoon 3? I think Splatoon 3 is fine where it is, but
if you really want to push, we can talk about
I don't care that much. Yeah, I think
Splatoon 3 single player is like the Nintendo juice.
It really is.
It's
really good.
That's the beauty of it.
And I want to play more over the holiday. I'm definitely going to jump in and play some more Splatoon 3 over the holiday. And maybe we can do some with the community as well, because doing that with Mario Kart is great fun.
Totally. I should mention that Overwatch 2 just kind of dominated my life, and definitely ate into a lot of Splatoon 3 multiplayer time. But that's not to say I don't still love Splatoon 3 multiplayer.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, Bally, do you want to count down from 10 to 1 on our list?
Number 10 is Bayonetta 3. Number 9, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Number 8, Triangle Strategy. Number 7, Splatoon 3. Number 6, Tinykin. Number 5, Oli Oli World. Number 4, Cuphead The Delicious Last Course. Number 3, Citizen Sleeper. Number 2, Xenoblade 3. And number 1, Tunic.
Hell of a list. I don't want anyone coming in here saying it was a bad year for video games. What the fuck are you smoking? What is wrong with you? excellent year, and so many that, man, looking at the stuff that didn't make it onto the list, it's like, God, there's so many great games that didn't make it.
Yeah.
Which is a testament, I think, to how good it's been. I think it's been a really good year for Nintendo, particularly, right? Like, they've just had lots of games coming out, and a lot of people might not rank them as the top tier because those people only like Mario and Zelda, but I think that they've delivered here. They have really
the people who only like Mario and Zelda were all clamoring for Kirby, and
that's true. Yeah,
someone who didn't know about our podcast coming to see our list knowing we're a Nintendo podcast would be shocked that Kirby didn't make the top 10.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And probably like Pokemon and Mario plus Rabbids, but I think that's the strength of this show is I think we really do shine a lot more light on indies that
for sure.
So many other Game of the Year lists just seem to forget, or they end up lower down the list, and I think it's important that we want to judge all games on Nintendo platforms, not just the first party.
I think probably majority of our lists are indie games at number 1, maybe. Like, we might have to go back and check that, but it's a lot, right?
So the last few years, I want to say last year was Eastward.
Yeah,
so that's
of
a
course.
good example.
Yeah. And then the year before that was Ori, followed by Hades, but Hades very well could have been number 1 as well.
Right.
And then I think Luigi's Mansion was there before that,
Luigi's Mansion was 2019.
2018 was Celeste, of course.
2018 was Celeste.
And 2017 Breath of the Wild, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, if you keep going back, I think you can keep going back. I think 2016 was Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, and then you kind of go back from there. But since around 2017, we have more indies as our Game of the Year than first-party Nintendo games, which, I think...
Hades came very close to number 1, as did Metroid Dread. Both of those decisions were incredibly tight.
Really hard,
really close stuff. And then, I think 2019 with Luigi's Mansion, that was just like... It just felt right. I don't... I think we had very... personalized lists coming together on that one,
because you were into Wargroove and I was into Bloodstained, and neither of those were kind of like coalescing. So
exactly, but again, all indies, barring Luigi, obviously. But
I if you haven't played Citizen Sleeper, that's the one thing from this list. If you have not played Citizen Sleeper, please play that game. It is so good, and I really want more people to play it.
I think it was another game that kind of got swept under the Elden Ring rug, where Elden Ring came out, and then that was all my podcast talked about for like a couple of months. And I think
exactly.
Again, Tunic is a very good example of a game that got a little bit missed because of Elden Ring. So Tunic and Citizen Sleeper, I think I played very close together, and both of those under the shadow of Elden Ring, in that time of year. So would recommend both massively.
Look, if you like Elden Ring, you should play Tunic, because it does a lot of same things.
It is literally Zelda Elden Ring. It's like Tunic.
Zelden Ring, indeed.
Zelden. There we go.
Amazing. What a great list. What a great year. Really, really good stuff. And
I've got a question, though.
Yes, Bally.
Did our listeners match our list?
Now, let's take a look, shall we? I have tabulated a top 5 from our listeners, and this is basically, I sent out a form. I said, put in your top 5 games, and I will give them points based on what your number 1 is, number 2. So it goes 5 points for number 1, 4 for number 2, and so on until you get to number 5, where you get 1 point for a number 5 pick. And you didn't have to put all the slots filled. You could do 3 or whatever, but I've tabulated everything up and I've calculated, and let me tell you, Bally, that our number 1 game is almost double the points of our number 2 game.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a big margin. So at number 5, Splatoon 3. Congratulations, well done, Splatoon 3, for making it. And a lot of people play Splatoon 3. At number 4, Triangle Strategy at number 4, which is very
That's
strong.
Very impressive showing from Triangle Strategy.
Yeah, obviously we have a lot of Fire Emblem fans in the community, so I think that makes sense. Definitely is, if you're into that game, I think that Triangle Strategy will do well for you. At number 3, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at number 3. So it's doing pretty well there. Definitely expected. At number 2, Pokemon Legends Arceus at number 2. Wow. Which means that at number 1, by an absolute bullet, and I am so proud of this community for making the correct choice, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, with almost double the points. The people who voted for Xenoblade, I think almost universally put it as their number one game. It was like, it was funny looking at the graph because you had like little gaps for like someone put like Neon White and someone put like Kirby at number one, and then Xenoblade is like this tower just towering above. It was like multiple people had it at number one. I think a couple of people had it at number two, but it was just like overwhelmingly the choice to be the number one game.
Interesting.
So thanks everybody.
Interesting. Kirby didn't get up there as well. So
Kirby probably comes in around number 6, I think.
Okay.
So it's a little bit further, but I'll try and post the full kind of ranked list onto Discord after this show goes out, and so people can take a look. But thanks everybody for voting and for chiming in there, and well done for making the correct choice. You're all smart people. So that's good to see. Awesome. Well, I think, Bally, that's probably going to wrap us up for the show.
It's another year of podcasting.
Another year of podcasting gone. We obviously have to get out of here and plug stuff and let people know what's going on. I think we have a little bit of plans for some bonus episodes coming on the feed, but that's basically going to be audio versions of our personal top 10 lists, I would imagine, right? So that's what we've done the last couple of years. We both make a video for our top 10 overcross all platforms game of the year stuff, and we will probably post the audio from those videos. I would imagine probably one on Christmas Day, one on New Year's Day. I think that's probably the best way to do it. I think we've done that before.
So you'll get 2 Christmas presents, not
exactly. So look out for those in your feed. I will be starting work on mine quite soon and starting the editing process and all that stuff. Writing, I need to start writing it, of course. Look out for some fun lists there from both of us. And we have some fine folks, obviously, who support the show over on patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, and we would like to thank those people for supporting us, Bally.
Yes, thank you to a new patron that we have, and Jeffrey C. Thank you so much for your support. But thank you also to our $10 patrons. They are Zach S., Thomas, Matthew, Albert, and Wicked Gamer UK Alan. Thank you for your support, and thank you to all of our patrons, and not just for the last 2 weeks, but for the whole year, because it has been a whole year of Patreon, and we hugely appreciate the support you give the show to keep the show on the road, you know, cover the costs of a lot of these video games that we like to talk about.
Absolutely. It's been very, very good, and appreciate everybody jumping in. Of course, if you want to hear our not Nintendo Game of the Year stuff, that is already up on the Patreon feed, so hop in for $1 and you can listen to that show where we would talk about the aforementioned Elden Ring as well as other such games. So go listen to that. You can also find us on the internet in various places, still on Twitter somehow, at LordNBZ. You can find me there. Where can they find you, Bally?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91.
Fantastic. And you can also find the podcast on Twitter at TNL Podcast, and I'm sure that will be retweeting our videos when we put those up and other such things as well. And I'll probably post the list of the top listener picks as well on that feed at some point. So yeah, go check that out. Obviously, you can join our Discord, which is a fun community, as many people mentioned in their emails in today, which is great. And you can chat with people there. A lot of Pokemon chat was going on, and a lot of chat around certain other things like the Game Awards happening. Always a fun community, so you can jump in and check it out, as well as our YouTube channel, where if you want a YouTube version of the show, you can always go over there and check that out too. You can find us on various podcasting platforms such as Spotify and Stitcher. You can also download us in any podcasting app that you have. If you got your Spotify Wrap, shout that out and let us know, because we saw a few of those, as well as I think Pocket Cast does its own kind of ranking also, which Bally and I
have. Did you listen to a lot of podcasts this year?
Oh, I don't know, maybe a quarter of my life. Just a little. Bally and I have some scary numbers in terms of our listening.
I don't even want to say them on the show.
No, I think it is actually terrifying.
We might put that on Patreon sometime.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. So go and check that stuff out, and obviously you can subscribe to the show and you'll get it every couple of weeks when it does release. But I think that is pretty much it.
MBZ, I should say, when you found out Bally Jr. was coming into this world, I think we were both confident the podcast would do okay.
Yeah.
But I think that I have been very pleased and impressed with us, and especially you, in keeping this show on the road, because my time has become a lot more precious.
Yeah, it's definitely harder, let's say, to figure out times to record.
Even if we could figured out the times, I was nervous about actually even playing games to talk about on the show, which is obviously a huge part of the show. And I think combined with me finding time to play the games, but also you finding the time to be very patient with me when I'm like, right, Amy said, now we're visiting family, we're doing this, and then because everything becomes a lot more rigid when you have a baby, and I think I appreciate your flexibility in recording with me, and keeping the show on the road for 2022 when we're a small podcast, like two people, like one host having a baby is quite a big deal. So for sure. I'm glad that we've managed to keep the show on the road, and hopefully into 2023 we can just keep trucking along.
Yeah, for sure. And I know things will get easier eventually.
Yes.
It's it's your first time doing this, of course, and I totally.
I don't know when you said you had friends who also had children who then their video game playing had just completely halted, I thought, like, well, I must be doing something right. There we go, right.
Yeah, exactly. You figured it out, you found a way to do it. And look, I mean, before when we first started, I think you were finishing about 30 games a year, and now you're doing it with a child. So I think that says like a huge amount, honestly. Yeah. So, no, props to you for being able to figure that out. And we'll make sure we can keep figuring this out as we go along. And I'm sure there'll be bumps in the road here and there.
Yes.
I'm going to be in Japan next year for 3 weeks, so we have to figure out what to do then.
Very exciting.
So yeah, I'm sure it'll be good.
And shout outs to my wife Caroline, who looks after Bally Jr. while I'm recording most weekends.
Hugely appreciated.
Yeah,
yes,
she puts in her shift for sure.
For sure. Well, that's going to close us out for the year. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in for us, for listening, for being fantastic. We really do appreciate you. And, if listeners weren't here, we wouldn't be here making it. So you all make this happen. And, we will see you in the new year for another year of video games and Nintendo.
And
a sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the fucking Wild. Let's go, everybody. Let's go. Very excited for that.
Kingdom of Tears. Let's go.
Kingdom of those. Get crying, baby. Get those tears out. Shout out to Xenoblade 3 as well for literally making me cry, which has never happened in a video game before. So big shout outs. We'll see you in the new year. Until then, thanks everybody for listening. Bye bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were Maple Treeway from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Triple Dip from Splatoon 3, and The Weight of Life from Xenoblade Chronicles 3, all copyright Nintendo 2022.